Excuse me, everyone. If you have a seat, go ahead and sit in that seat because we've got to know how many people we can allow in the room. So just please, if you're not sitting, go ahead and sit. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome y'all to the first commission meeting for the Joint Study Commission on Low THC Medical Oil Access. This comes out of HB 65. So again, thank you for your interest in this subject, and we've got a lot of work to do. And we're going to start off with a prayer by our President Pro Tem of the Senate, Mr. Butch Miller.
Thank you. Can we go to the Lord in prayer? Our Heavenly Father, we're here today with humble and grateful hearts. We're asking, Lord, for your guidance and judgment and discernment, as we know there are passionate minds and passionate hearts in this room. We ask, Lord, that your wisdom prevail upon the members of this committee, upon this body, and upon those in the gallery. We ask all these things in your holy and precious name. Amen.
Now, if we'll all rise for the pledge, led by Representative David Clark. All right, again, thank you everybody for being here. Real quick, we're going to go through an introduction of the commission members. I'm Senator Matt Brass. I'm down in District 28 representing Coweta County, Heard County, Troup County, Carroll County, and part of Fulton County. To my left here, I have the President Pro Tem of the Senate, Butch Miller, out of Gainesville, Georgia, the 49th District. And then not with us today is Senator Ben Watson. He's from Savannah, the 1st District. He's also chairman of Veterans, Military, and Homeland Security, and he's also a medical doctor. Representative Gravely, my distinguished co-chairman, will introduce his House members. Oh, I'm sorry. I've also, on the Senate side, also appointed by the Lieutenant Governor. We have some citizen appointees. I've got Dale Jackson out of Troup County. And then I have Sheriff James Woodruff, who's the Troup County Sheriff.
Thank you, Senator Brass. My name is Micah Gravely. I represent House District 67. That's going to be the west side of Douglas County and the south side of Paulding County, which is my home county. I'm going to let my members introduce themselves. So I'm happy to be on this committee. I'm looking forward to serving on this committee and how we can benefit the state of Georgia. And I couldn't have asked for a better co-chairman in Senator Brass. And I'll go ahead and let the members from the House side, appointed by Speaker David Ralston, introduce themselves, starting with Representative Powell.
My name's Alan Powell. I represent Franklin, Hart, and Madison counties up on the northeastern side of the state. Been in the House getting close to 30 years, and I chair the House Committee on Public Safety, Homeland Security.
And I'm David Clark, State Representative for District 98. That's in Gwinnett County, Beaufort, Sugar Hill, Suwanee. There's 3 cities, and I'm serving in my 4th year now, 2nd term.
All right, thank you, everybody. And we appreciate this commission, all the members of it, and their willingness to serve, because what we have ahead of us is a lot of work to do. We've got a long road. There's going to be many hurdles. The system that we're in front of was not set up to move fast, and so I kind of want to set the expectations that we're not going to be able to snap our fingers and make this happen. For those of you that have been involved with this for years, I think y'all probably understand that more than a lot. So, but for sake of time, you know, I kind of want to go over some house rules, and the purpose of the house rules are really more important than what the actual rules are. You know, it's like I said, we have so much work to do on this, so much work. And so the efficiency of these public hearings, we have got to move through very quickly because we have a lot of information that we've got to absorb. We have a lot of different people with a lot of different views that we need to hear from. So I would ask that everyone please abide by these house rules. And, you know, if you can't, if you just want to pull your hair out and shout something, I'll just ask you to step outside and do that. But real quick, some simple house rules. Number one, every person in here has a right to an opinion. And we're not all going to agree on everything said. But every single person needs to be treated with dignity and respect when they're in this room. You go outside of this four-walled room, you can do whatever you want. But in here, we're all going to treat each other with respect. And if you cannot do that, you're going to be asked to leave. I want everybody to nod that that's good. Thank you. Because I know we live in a society where we think it's not okay to agree, but the truth is it is. And we're gonna abide by that. So that's rule 1. Rule 1A, I want everybody to take your phone out right now and turn it off, or at least turn the ringer off. I'm sorry, you don't have to turn it off, but turn the ringer off. Anybody wanting to video, it's already being live fed through our house.ga.gov website as well as senate.ga.gov site. So there's be plenty of video. You don't have to video and try to get a gotcha moment because somebody's already got us. So rule number 2, this one's important for the efficiency of these meetings. No comments from the audience. The only people speaking will be the members of this committee and the people that are recognized by the chairman, myself or Representative Gravely, that will either be at that podium or on that microphone over there. So please abide by that. Whether you agree with what a person's saying or not, if you don't like it, just do the old Southern thing and say, bless their little heart. And we're going to move on. Number 3, for our speakers and when we get into the public comment, we're going to be very strict on the time. This is not to limit your right to a voice. This is to allow all voices to be heard, as many as possible. And again, we're limited in time, so we're going to try to move very efficiently. And I will hold up a sign. Here it is. I'm going to give everybody a 30-second notice, and I'm going to give you a stop, and then we're going to turn off your microphone. Okay? Representative Peaks over there looking nervous, but he'll just shout. But anyway, with that being said, Chairman Gravely is now going to kind of go over the history and the purpose of this commission. Representative Gravely.
Thank you, Senator Bress. We're gathered here today based upon the last 5 years of legislation in the state of Georgia. That legislation was pioneered by a gentleman that you will hear from today, Representative Alan Peake. In 2014, House Bill 885 was brought before the General Assembly. That opened up the question all across Georgia about medical cannabis and its effects on those who could benefit from it. That bill did not pass, but the following year, or that summer, there was a study committee that was commissioned, and they traveled the state to hear from folks like we're going to hear from today. They heard from parents, they heard from law enforcement, they heard from medical professionals, industry professionals, they heard from everyone ranging every aspect of the spectrum. We came back to the legislature and passed House Bill 1, which provided for medical cannabis oil. We actually took the code section from the 1980 law that was passed in Georgia, and we added 8 diagnoses at that time. The following year, we were able to come back and raise the THC limit to provide the low THC oil, which is now legal in Georgia. House Bill 65 also added some of the diagnosis. We were able to add autism prior to that as well. So that part of House Bill 65 provided for this study committee. Because what we have found in the state of Georgia and the registry, which we are very proud to say has not been compromised, we are hearing testimony from families and citizens across this state that are seeing wonderful results, positive results, from treating with the low THC cannabis oil. But that registry, which now includes 681 registered physicians and 5,570 patients here in the state of Georgia, is lacking one thing, and that is access to the medicine that they are legally allowed to possess in our state. I want to make clear what this commission has been charged with. We are charged with a sole purpose, one singular mission, and that is to look at access for what is currently and legally allowed in Georgia. This commission will not entertain lowering or raising any aspect or percentages of the current oil. The commission will also not entertain the recreational argument of whether or not marijuana should be legalized for recreational purposes in the state of Georgia. The members of this committee have been charged with one thing, and that is to find out what pathway for the patients in Georgia who are on this registry, who obtained their card and possess their card, how can they access the medicine that this General Assembly has said that they are allowed to possess, medicine that we have seen affect families both young and old. So as we move forward in these committee hearings, please know that whatever your feelings may be, whatever opinions may be out there, the sole charge of this commission is to determine how Georgia will provide access to the current patients registered on the Georgia Medical Cannabis Registry. What you got after that?
All right, with that, the public comment section, if you wanted to sign up for that, that was outside. We'll open that up again we're going to take a break in about an hour. We'll take a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back. So if you want to sign up then, you can. And again, we're going to have, 30 minutes or so for that. So it will be limited, but we'll just we'll do it on a first come, first serve. And, we just ask you to be very respectful during that time. But with that, we're going to get into our presentations. And to kick us off, we have Representative Alan Peake out of Macon, Georgia. And although he deserves that, again, for sake of time, let's just keep all that to a minimum. Thank you.
A whole bunch. Good. Thank you, Chairman Brass and Chairman Gravely. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come speak today to this distinguished group. To my colleagues that I've served with for many years, it's a pleasure to be back with you, and to the citizen appointees, look forward to your input on this commission as well too. So what I'm going to do real quick, if it's okay with the chairman, is just give a brief overview. Chairman Gravely gave some points, but let's just kind of walk through a couple things that I think are important as we get an update of where we are on medical cannabis in the state. You guys have to help me. That's bingo right there. There you go. HB1, Haley's Hope Act, was named after little Haley Cox, a little girl who was suffering 100 to 200 seizures a day. A constituent of mine whose mom reached out to me and basically with a very simple message: please help my family. As I got to know this family, and we all got to know little Haley, we were compelled to push forward for some type of breakthrough to allow Georgia to allow access or allow legal possession of medical cannabis oil here in Georgia. That resulted in HB1, Haley's Hope Act, that was signed by the governor in April of 2015. You'll see a couple of folks up there. Senator Miller, who was had a huge impact on the Senate on getting that bill passed that year, was there for the bill signing. It was a very special day. As you see, many families there. That's little Haley Cox right there, and her mom right there, Janaea Cox, as well as dozens and dozens of families who were there and had fought very hard to see that bill passed. What did HB1 do? It provided immunity from prosecution for possession of medical cannabis oil for 8 qualifying conditions. You can't possess more than 20 ounces of the oil at a given time. Patient must register with the state in order to have the legal right to possess the medical cannabis oil, and it cannot exceed more than 5% THC. The conditions that were allowed under that first bill were seizures, cancer, ALS, multiple sclerosis, Crohn's disease, Parkinson's disease, mitochondrial disease, and sickle cell disease. We were one of the first states in the country to allow legal possession for sickle cell disease as well too. That was followed up by SB 16 that was authored by Senator Ben Watson, who is on this committee, not here today, that added 6 conditions to the existing law: Alzheimer's, AIDS, autism. Again, I think we were the second or third state in the country to add autism to the list of qualifying conditions. Tourette syndrome, peripheral neuropathy, epidermolysis bullosa, which is a rare skin disease. A young boy and his family were the inspiration behind that. And we also added eligibility if an individual was in hospice care. It also provided reciprocity with other states, which was a key issue for those who were traveling with the oil, and we reduced reporting requirements for physicians. And then this past session, HB 65 was passed. Senator Matt Brass was instrumental in getting this passed in the Senate that added PTSD and intractable pain to the list of qualifying conditions so that we now have 16 medical conditions that are allowed. It did create this commission to study and recommend a solution, and that was signed by Governor Deal in 2018. Chairman Gravely gave a couple of comments, but I just want to highlight again that as of right now, as of July 31st, there are 646 physicians that have registered with the state to properly register their individuals. A couple of those are here today. Thank you to those of you who have been going through that process, and we now have over 5,400 patients that are registered with the state to legally possess medical cannabis oil. But here's some interesting information. If you want to look at the breakdown of the conditions that are folks have been signing up for, seizures is the #1 condition. Many of those are children who suffer from seizures, but we have just as many adults who are benefiting as well too. Cancer is the second largest condition. Peripheral neuropathy, which was added 2 years ago, is third, and then multiple sclerosis, autism, Crohn's. The interesting thing is intractable pain that was just added on July 1st has 177 people signed up, as well as PTSD of 67. So if you do the math, it doesn't exactly add up to 100% because some people qualify under several conditions, but that is the registry and the makeup of the registry at this point. Here's the interesting stat. We've been averaging about 300 additions to the registry each month for the last 5 to 6 months. In July, when we added PTSD and intractable pain, the number jumped to 472. I fully expect that possibly by the end of the year, that while we're 5,400 people on the registry now, we may be close to 10,000 people maybe by the time the legislature convenes again in January. There is clearly a demand and clearly a request from the citizens of this state to be able to have legal possession, but also the legal right to access medical cannabis oil here in the state. So what are the challenges that continue to remain for those that are properly registered with the state? Every single day, I'm getting a social media message, an email, a text message, some type of message with a couple questions. I've signed up for the registry. What do I do now? Or how do I now get the oil? I've gone to the doctor, gone through the registry process, paid my $25 to get my card, but the doctor or the pharmacist, whoever I'm chatting with, is telling me I can't help you now at this point. You're on your own of how do you get the oil at this point. And so that is the challenge that continues to remain for patients here in Georgia. And so here's some of their solutions. Since they still can't access medical cannabis oil in Georgia, with limited exceptions, very low THC oil, hemp oil, if you will. Folks can buy it online, buy it over the internet, if it's less than 0.3%, because it's considered hemp. It's a gray area in the law, but you could go on Amazon right now and order hemp oil or CBD oil. The problem is that you may not have any idea what is in that product. You may not know how much CBD content is. You may not know if it's got any THC level. It's supposed to have less than 0.3% if it's going to be sold on, but it's still a very gray area as well in the federal law. And what we're finding also is that many of the conditions that are allowed under Georgia law need an elevated level of THC that's allowed under Georgia law up to 5%. And so this hemp oil, while it is readily available, is really is risky. You don't know what you're getting in it, and it doesn't really provide the relief that many Georgia citizens are expecting. Others are traveling to another state to obtain it and risk violating federal law by bringing it back to Georgia. We've heard many stories of folks going to another state, obtaining the oil from a reputable manufacturer, maybe in another state, but they risk the they have the prospect of being arrested if they were found, because they are violating federal law by transporting medical cannabis oil across state lines. It's also just not it's also impractical for many people. Many people that sign up for the registry have debilitating illnesses. They are already stretched financially to the max because of their condition. And so to tell them and simply go, well, you can just go to another state and get it and buy it and bring it back, is just a sign of and lack of compassion, quite frankly. Because many of these, it's just not practical for them to travel to another state to obtain it. The financial burden of that and the logistical burden of that is just not realistic. And thirdly, many are buying the plant off the street and making it the oil themselves. We know of several families that have just said, hey, you know, I can't travel out of state, but I do know that I can go to any street corner in our state and buy weed off the street and convert it into oil myself. And that just sends chills down my spine, as it should for each of us. Here we are, we're forcing soccer moms, dads with children with autism, grandparents with Parkinson's disease, to one, go try and find and buy marijuana off the street from somebody they don't know. They have no idea what is in that plant, the content of CBD or THC ratio. And so it is incredibly risky, as well as being a violation of Georgia law as well, too. And then finally, many folks have gone to an underground network. We have been very open about, my wife and I, that over the last several years we have committed to providing medical cannabis oil to as many families as we possibly can. That we have a reputable manufacturer who we trust, who gets the medical cannabis oil here to Georgia. I don't know how it gets here, so I'm not involved in the transportation of it across state lines. But when it gets here, we are providing it to families at no cost. And we have incredible stories as a result of this process. In fact, I'll share some in a minute if we have time. It's up to the commission, to the chairman. But the reality is that is not sustainable. We have had to, over the last 3 to 4 weeks, this network of families that we have been working with have had to finally tell folks who are contacting us, no, we cannot provide the product to you because we cannot get enough here to sustain the request that we are having. It's the old limited supply and an incredible demand problem. And so there have been some very painful conversations with some very sick, physically sick individuals in our state, and telling them that I'm sorry that we just cannot help you anymore, and that's been a very painful discussion. So that's just not, that option is just not a sustainable one as well. How about the national update? Let's look real quick at what's going on all over the country. There are now 46 states that now have some form of medical cannabis law on the books. There are 31 of 50 states have some form of cultivation inside their borders, allowing their citizens to be able to obtain or have possession of medical cannabis in their state, including Florida and Arkansas that are our neighbors. Oklahoma just recently passed a law as well, too. So 15 have possession-only laws similar to what we have, including our neighbors Tennessee, Alabama, and South Georgia. So the point is, this issue is coming across the country. It is going to have to be dealt with in Georgia because our citizens are going to demand it. There's also some federal action in the CARES Act, protects state medical programs. It removes CBD from the Controlled Substance Act. It'll eliminate the federal research barriers and ensure quality for military veterans. And so we could sit here and say, well, let's just wait for Congress to act. But in the meantime, our citizens suffer. And quite frankly, I don't have a whole lot of faith in Congress acting on any issue these days. So I think that's not a viable option as well, too. What is public opinion on this issue? The AJC has done numerous polls on this issue. It's continued to be off the charts of citizens who support access to medical cannabis oil in our state. 11 Alive did a survey about a year or two ago and showed 84% support it. So it's overwhelming support for us to take action and move in this direction. Here's to the members of the commission. And I guess what my hope is and what we fought for together, many of us, through significant fights and discussion and debate, is what do we do? And that's the charge to this commission. I fully understand that that's what you've been created for. And what I'd like to encourage is that we come up with a recommendation similar to what has been done in several other states. Okay. That we have limited licenses, 5 to 10, that it not include smoking, that it be strictly regulated by the Department of Public Health with the proper restrictions. And that's just an example. I've got for those who are fearful of this and wondering, okay, well, this is weed that we're about to approve, this is it. This is what it is. It's oil, medical cannabis oil that is changing lives. And Mr. Chairman, with that, I'll be available for questions, or if you want me to go sit down, I'll do that as well, too.
We have a question from Chairman Gravely.
Thank you, Representative Peake. From the beginning, as I stated in my opening statement, you've pioneered this initiative. I thank you for the lives that you've helped, the families that you've helped, 2 of which were members of my own family, and I appreciate that greatly. With you gone or your absence from the legislature, which you're going to be sorely missed, the question I have, and I've wondered, and I've yet to be able to sit down with you and talk at length about it, is what are your plans? Let's say we move forward. On the last page of your slide here, one of the last pages, it says a limited license of 5 to 10. Are you going to stay involved? Are you one that would petition or submit an application for one of the licenses? Where do you go from here, having done the work you've done in the legislature?
Well, I appreciate the question. Let me just say one. I have incredible confidence. That was one of the reasons I was comfortable retiring, was that I have incredible confidence in the leadership of the David Clarks and Butch Millers and Brass and Powell and Gravely that remain. I have no doubt that you guys will finish the job. I have no doubt that you will. I've been very clear since I've started this process that I would never make a dime off this initiative. I wanted it to be very clear that what I was committed to was helping Georgia citizens have access to medicine that can change the quality of life for them or their loved one. And I'm still committed to that. I will never make a dime, not a dime, off this issue. If the will of the legislature is to create a limited licensure process, yes, I would attempt to become one of the licensees, but only under a nonprofit umbrella, so that we could provide the oil to families at no cost for those that needed it from a financial standpoint, or at a lowest cost as possible to those who were properly registered with the state. So I'm as committed now as I was from day one that I will not profit off this venture. But I've seen the benefit. I've seen the lives changed. And so if it's the will of the legislature, yes, I would attempt to pursue one of those licenses, but only in a nonprofit status.
And I can vouch for Representative Peake because he likes to play golf way too much to get involved again too much. But I've got a quick question. I want to back up to the people that you've been giving the medicine to. Where all are they traveling from?
We have gotten and connected with folks. And in fact, some of the family network is here. In fact, one of them is actually on your commission. This group of dedicated families are the real heroes of this effort. They are meeting families in the Target parking lot in Dalton. They are meeting families at the Chick-fil-A in Ackworth. They are meeting folks at the gas station in Gainesville. All over the state, every corner of the state, we have been providing product to Georgia citizens. And we continue to hear story after story from these individuals who are just incredibly grateful because they have no other option. They have no other option. And we currently, as of last count, have provided a bottle of medical cannabis oil to 552 Georgia citizens at no cost. And that is why that is just not sustainable. We can't get 550 bottles a month from the manufacturer. And so that is why we're, at this point, having to tell folks that we can no longer, unless they have a child that would benefit or it's an individual that's in a terminal situation, we have had to start telling folks that we can't help them.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission?
Just one quickly.
Chairman Gravely?
That brings up one quick, and I want to be very brief, but the oil that you're providing, we know for a fact, is lab tested, safe, and that these families know exactly what they're ingesting, correct? Podium.
They would contact me, they would send me a medical summary, we would get that information, send it to the manufacturer. The manufacturer would make a recommendation of, okay, maybe they need a 1-to-1 CBD to THC ratio product or a 20-to-1, and we provide that product to them. It comes with a lab result if the individual wants to see it, and yes, this has been a product that has been proven over time to be safe and effective.
Thank you, Representative Peake, for being here today. Appreciate your passion for this issue. Appreciate your leadership on it. Is there any psychotropic effect or value to an individual who might want to abuse the cannabidiol oil that's being provided?
There is none.
There's no psychotropic value whatsoever.
If you took all of this, this is the most elevated level of THC in Georgia, the 1-to-1 product, about 4.9% THC. If an individual took this whole thing, probably the worst thing that would happen to them is they'd either get really sleepy or they'd have to go to the bathroom a whole bunch. And
Two bottles?
Well, two bottles.
3 bottles? There's no psychotropic value?
There's very, very limited, if any. In fact, if you took a drug test, you may not even it would show up THC level.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Representative Peake.
Chairman Brass, can I make one final comment? I know I'm past my time, and I'm.
Actually, we have one more question.
Okay.
I apologize. Dale Jackson.
Representative Peake, obviously you're someone who has traveled the country, have plenty of connections, know all of the local laws in those states. I was wondering, as someone who has also traveled to many different states, do you know of any state where I, as a Georgia resident of a autistic minor, can go, as many would have me do, and legally purchase cannabis oil for my son?
Mr. Jackson, I would say probably the only place you could do it would be maybe one of the 9 states that has recreational use. Maybe you could go there and buy the plant and convert it to an oil yourself, maybe. But I can't say that I can tell you of a single one that has just medical cannabis laws, no recreational use. I'm not sure there is one.
I would inform you that
You probably know that better than I do, yeah.
legally there is not a single city or state in this country that I, a resident of Georgia, can travel to and purchase cannabis oil for my minor autistic son.
Yeah. Just one final comment, and thanks for this is, in my 5 sessions or years of dealing with this issue, this is actually the 3rd commission that has been created. The first one, we did hear stories of families. The second one was a commission created to decide should we have access here in Georgia, and that was voted down by that commission to not allow access here in Georgia, cultivation in Georgia. So while I fully understand that there are other study committees that many of you members may be serving on, and other commissions going on, and other important issues to our state, including the budget and Medicaid expansion and illegal immigration and education and rural issues, I fully understand that. But to the dad, to the grandfather who has Parkinson's disease, to the soccer mom who's suffering from cancer, to the elderly woman who's debilitated with ALS, to the homosexual man who suffers from AIDS, to the dad who has an autistic child, there is no greater issue on a day-to-day basis than coming up with a solution for medical cannabis oil in our state. And so I am incredibly optimistic about the work that this commission is going to do, and encouraged by the solution that this commission will come up with. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time, too.
Thank you, Representative Peake. We appreciate your service to this great state and especially to this cause. So you're a great American. Next up, we've got Jillian Wooten. If you would come to the podium. In fact, all our guest speakers will be coming to the podium with the exception of one. We're going to allow her to speak from her seat. So. If you would just introduce yourself and why you're here, and then go right into what you have to say.
My name is Jillian Wooten. I am here because I have an 11-year-old son. His name is Aiden. He started having seizures when he was 9 months old. At the time, we were told they were just febrile seizures, no big deal. Between 9 months and 18 months, his seizures increased. From 1 a week, 2 a week. By the time we were at 18 months, we were at 50 to 80 seizures per day. Sometimes they would be 2 minutes, sometimes they would be 2 hours. We tried everything. At the time, we didn't know what form of epilepsy he had. We only knew that it was severe. He was in and out of the hospital at least 60% of every year from 9 months to age 6. No meds worked. We would rotate every 3 months to try to get a good combination. At about age 6, we were recommended to have what they call a VNS implant, which is a vague nerve stimulator. So we had that done. We thought that this would help us. What happened was we went from having 2 to 3 hour-long seizures to under 10-minute seizures. And you would think that's good, but when you're still having 30 to 40 a day, it's still not good. So we just made do with what we could do, the best that we could. Meds didn't work. Around 7, he was diagnosed via genetic testing with what we call Dravet syndrome. It's a very rare, catastrophic form of epilepsy. Through the same genetic testing, we were able to find out which meds would and wouldn't work for him. So when we had that panel done, we found out that every epileptic medication on the market today was a no for our son. So with the VNS, knowing that we couldn't take any meds, kind of at a loss. So we were recommended to try cannabis oil. I wasn't really feeling it at first, I'll be honest. We were donated a bottle very graciously by somebody, and so we tried it. My son also has autism, so we had some behavior issues, some quirks that we were dealing with at school. Immediately what I noticed was his behavior dramatically increased. You're talking about a kid who was on so many meds. He was sitting, staring at the wall all day long, drooling, nonverbal. So we had limited speech. So once we started the cannabis, within 2 to 3 weeks, I noticed the speech was getting better. His teachers were telling us, his cognitive abilities are improving. He's able to retain information. I now had an 8-year-old who could finally spell his name with the letters in the proper order. So it was a big deal, huge deal. So kind of made do with that. He's 11 now. We made do with that. When he was about 9 and a half, we added THCA oil. So now we're doing all 3. And from that, what we have seen has been drastic. So we have gone from having seizures 30 to 50 a day after the VNS, still 30 to 50 a day, but maybe a minute or 2. We have 1 seizure a week now, sometimes 2. Last a minute, 2 minutes. So he's in a really good place right now. And although ideally, who wouldn't want their child to never have a seizure again, compared to what he was at years ago, it's fantastic. He's almost reading. He's, spelling his name. He knows his colors. He can say his alphabet. And, granted, he's 11 and mentally he is 4, so he will always be limited. But there's a different outlook for his future now than there was before. So as far as the product that we use, we have been very graciously given this product by a man who has, put his life and career on the line to do this for parents. And that's not always going to be there. So there's a concern in the future, how will we get it? And as a parent who's been involved with this from day one, 4 or 5 years ago, you would think, they can get their oil, but no, it's very, very hard for us to get the oil, very hard. There have been times where, we've got to let them know 3 or 4 months ahead of time. And even then, it's a problem. So there's a great concern about access in this state. What you're allowed to get, hemp oil, doesn't work for kids like my son. And so, as far as what this commission is doing and what it means for my son, it's a huge deal as far as where this goes next year.
Thank you, Jillian. Any questions from the committee? Well, I'll ask one. So you said you're getting it from someone in Georgia. Are you having to travel to go get it, or is it?
Yes.
What does that process look like?
The process from start to finish, I have learned that there needs to be some sort of advance notice given, more than 2 weeks. Usually about a month out to 6 weeks, I will give notice, and we will figure out where to meet. Usually it's within an hour and a half drive. And I've met at grocery stores, I've met at gas stations, I've met at the Capitol. It's just whatever is convenient.
And if you were to purchase the oil, say on the black market, well, it's always going to be on the black market until we finish this, but do we know a cost involved? Do you have have you ever not gotten it for free?
Mm-hmm.
And when that happened, how much did that cost?
There was 2 occasions. One time, 2-ounce bottle was $150, and the other time it was a 3.4-ounce bottle, and it was $220. And that lasts about 4 weeks.
Fair enough. Any other questions? All right, thank you, Jillian. Okay, next up, we got Daryl Rogers. Daryl, when you get to the mic again, if you could introduce yourself, a little bit about why you're here, and then just jump right into your presentation.
Hi, my name is Daryl Rogers. I'm from Cary, North Carolina, and I'm here to talk to you about my son, Chase. Asked Chase, shaving with me when he was just a little kid, Do you know what it feels like to walk into a funeral home, walk up to a casket that contains your child's body, and see your child lying there? I do. Do you know what it feels like to placed your hand on your child's chest and feel his cold, stiff, lifeless body? I do. Do you know what it feels like to walk through the front door of your home, turn and look at your wife, look her in the eye, and say to her, honey, I have to tell you something. Our oldest son is dead. I do. And I'm here today because I don't want you to know what that feels like. I want to prevent as many Georgians as I can from knowing what that feels like. Can you advance the slide? Thank you. That's Chase, senior year of high school, 18 years old. Chase was a good kid growing up, never had any issues with him until he went to college, began to use marijuana. Dropped out of college, came back home. There's a long story about that, but Chase was an Eagle Scout. He had attended college on a football scholarship, but Chase, on May the 29th of 2014, made the choice to go to a park near our home, smoke a bowl of marijuana with some friends. Then he put his car keys into the hands of a young lady who was 18 years old. She got into the driver's seat, got behind the wheel of his car. Chase climbed into the front passenger seat of his own car, and another young man climbed into the back. You see, up to this point, I'd seen Chase's loss of ambition through his marijuana use. I had witnessed his declining cognitive abilities. I had seen firsthand how it impacted his choices, his use of marijuana. They left that park. They got out onto I-40, drove right into rush hour traffic. And that young lady ended up losing control of Chase's car in a curve running about 70 miles per hour. They left the road and struck a tree. And she had just smoked marijuana at the park with them before she got behind the wheel. When they hit the tree, they were running about 60 miles per hour. Chase was killed instantly. It took firefighters almost an hour to get the three of them out of the vehicle. The other two were transported to the hospital right away with serious injuries. Over the next several weeks, they were able to recover from their injuries to the extent that they could return home to continue their recovery. But 7 months after the wreck, and only a few weeks prior to what would have been her first court appearance, the young lady that had been driving Chase's car that day, a regular marijuana user, died after a fire broke out in her apartment. The fire chief said after their investigation that he believes that she poured gasoline all over the floor of her apartment, stood in the middle of it, and ignited it. She died the next day in the hospital. There were 2 suicide notes found. So, you may ask, well, Mr. Rogers, what does any of this have to do with medical marijuana? Well, number one, your brain doesn't know if it's medical or recreational. It's just THC. And then, just a few weeks prior to Chase's death, he told my wife, Kim, they went out to dinner together, just the two of them, and he told my wife, Kim, Mom, marijuana's not that bad. It's not as dangerous as alcohol, and besides that, they're legalizing it in a number of states now, and before you know it, it'll be legal across the entire United States. Legislators in other states had unknowingly, unwittingly sent a message to Chase, just like they did to thousands of other kids, that marijuana was safe to use. And thousands of them believed that it's safe to use and then get behind the wheel. And then there's my friend Corrine Lamarca, who lives in Ohio. Her daughter Jennifer was not a user. She was in her car just minding her own business at a traffic light when a man high on medical marijuana drove through the light at over 80 miles per hour, T-boned her car, pushed it into a block building that then collapsed on her car. Jennifer died, 22 years old. Chase was 20 when he died. And so, I appreciate that you're trying to solve a problem here today, and I'm empathetic. I really am. But I just want to caution you to be careful that in solving one problem that you don't create another bigger problem. Law enforcement does not have the tools, the same tools, to detect and to enforce impairment via marijuana that they do to detect and enforce drunk driving. Just go talk to anyone in law enforcement dealing with this issue. Go talk to the DAs. You'll see. So I just want to ask you to please carefully think about what you're going to do to protect the motorist in Georgia as you move forward with this.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Anybody from the committee? No questions. Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Okay, next up we have Kim Hedzik. Again, Kim, if you would just introduce yourself, a little bit about why you're here, and then get into your presentation. Thank you.
I'm here because I'm the mother of a 15-year-old boy named Christian. I don't have him on a slide, but I hope you can see. There was his dad. He's an honorary member of his middle school football team. He has cerebral palsy, so he doesn't actually play, but he's their good luck charm, he says. Shows up at most of their games, and they just love on him. So, but Christian has cerebral palsy, and he uses a wheelchair to get around. He's 95 pounds. He's 5'3". So he's a bit of a boy for me to be moving around. He started having daytime seizures when he was 5, but those are under control with a pharmaceutical drug called Keppra. However, he was diagnosed with a fairly rare seizure disorder called ESES, seizure disorder, about 5 years ago. That stands for something really hard to say. I'm going to try it. Electrical status epilepticus in sleep. And what that means is his seizures happen at night. You could walk in his room and you wouldn't know he's having one because they're just visible on an EEG, just brain waves spiking like crazy all night long. So in his case, his initial spike waves that diagnosed him with this showed that he was spiking about 95% of the night. And what this meant was we were seeing a very drowsy, sleepy kid all day, and we just didn't know why. We thought that was part of cerebral palsy. Maybe that's just how it is. But finally, this neurologist, Brandon Morris, met with us and said, no, this is a real thing. I think your son has this condition. You need to treat it. Let's make sure, let's diagnose it. And because if you don't, and he quoted a medical report, and it said, if left unchecked, this disorder can cause significant cognitive and language impairment. Amelioration of the continuous spikes must occur to improve the neuropsychological outcome. And what he was trying to tell me was that my son would slowly degenerate over time, not be able to learn, and slowly lose his language skills if I didn't do something. So we switched to a local-based neurologist at CHOA, and she did the usual things people do. In this case, she gave my son high doses of Valium. That just made him really fun, but it didn't do anything else. We went in the hospital for 3 consecutive months for 3 days at a pop, and he took intravenous steroids at high doses. That didn't do anything either. And then we tried Onfi, which is another pharmaceutical that many people try. That didn't work either. So after he failed to respond to all those treatments, our neurologist at that time, Dr. Hayumi Kim, suggested cannabis oil. And I was skeptical too. I was like, oh, geez, I don't know. Maybe that's just not a good idea. So I paused and did some research. And when I went back to her and said, I'm ready, she said, well, your timing's kind of off because I'm no longer willing to sign your registration card to give you the oil. All I can suggest is you forge ahead on your own. Have a nice day. Well, I didn't know where to go. I didn't know how to forge ahead on my own. And as we left the hospital after his last injection of high steroids, her PA, her physician's assistant, pulled me aside to let me know that ESES seizure disorder could cause sudden death. So I should just be aware of that. But I still had no choice. I had nowhere to go and nothing to do, and I couldn't help my son. So I found another neurologist who would sign for a medical marijuana card, and I went with him, and he signed my card. And then, of course, I had the same problem that Alan Peake showed us earlier, which was I have the card, but now what do I do? So I went to a parent Focus training session. Focus is a group that supports parents with special needs children. And I met Shannon Cloud and some others who were involved in Georgia Hope seizure, and learned an awful lot about the process, the legislation that was coming about, and learned that there was actually a way I could get a trial bottle of this oil to see if it would help my son. And we did try. We took a bottle of CBD oil, which was her first suggestion because it was the easier oil to obtain, but it had no effect. So we tried, I think we tried that 2 times. I think we did 2 different bottles. I think we were just really hopeful, like, maybe if we try it again, it'll work. It's like eating more ice cream, hoping somehow it'll even taste better the second time around. It didn't make much sense. But then, because he has nighttime seizures, it made sense to try an oil called CBN oil, which has 0.015% THC and is more targeted toward kids who have seizures at night. So we gave him the smallest dose possible for his weight, which was 0.35 milliliters. I wish I would have brought you the dropper. Imagining a milliliter is, only like the length of your pinky fingernail, so it's 0.35 of your fingernail. So it's a very small amount. But within a few weeks, we noticed a huge change. He started to sleep through the night after, I think, 11 years of never sleeping through the night? Because when he had these seizures and these spikes, he was never achieving REM sleep. I don't know how many of you could go to work each day if for years on end you never got into REM sleep. You'd be a mess. I'd be a mess. And he was a mess. I just didn't recognize it because I wasn't a neurologist. His teachers started to notice more consistent alertness at school. They asked me what we were doing. Had we been doing anything different? I was hesitant to tell them. So to confirm what we thought of as anecdotal stories, we asked to have another EEG to confirm that what we thought was happening really was happening. So we went in May of this past year, and his EEG came back 100% clean, not a single spike from the ESES seizure disorder. So to go from 95% spike, constantly spiking all night long, to absolutely nothing, my husband and I were floored, absolutely floored. So we need that oil. I don't know what we'll do when we can't get it the way we've been getting it. I try not to think about that because I have plenty of other things that worry me late at night. So I just know that without the help of some people who've been very generous and forward-thinking, we would really be in a huge bind. We didn't send this oil with my son when he went to camp recently. He went to a sleepaway camp, and we were nervous to send it because, well, what are you going to tell the camp counselor? Hey, if you don't mind, this is some cannabis oil we'd like you to give my child. So he said, all right, look, for 4 days, he'll live. I bet it'll be just fine. We'll just kind of deal with it. But when he got home, we noticed, again, his sleepiness, his lethargy, he's typically very sharp. He's actually really funny and has a quick wit. All of that was gone just in a few days. So we started up again, and it took maybe a week before we noticed our child back again. So that's all I've got.
Thank you, Kim. Got a question, Dale Jackson.
Kim, I'm curious, because I know there's a lot of questions about possible side effects, negative side effects. My son as well went through the first 2 years of his life having seizures continuously. And the doctor prescribed Topamax to begin with, and then Keppra. And I'm curious if your doctor also explained to you the different organs in your child's body that those medications that are FDA approved, that they were slowly going to kill over the next 5 years, and then we would eventually have to switch to something else.
They conveniently avoided saying anything like that, but I did know, and I do know that Keppra goes through the liver, and denial is my friend in this case because I don't have a solution to that either, but should something come along where he can be controlled, his daytime seizures and nighttime seizures could be controlled with either 1 or 2 oils, I would do it. I mean, who would want their child on a liver debilitating drug for, 50, 60 years?
Thank you for your testimony. A quick question. Have the members of the football team or the coaches, teachers seen a difference prior to being on cannabis oil and now that your son is on cannabis oil and have responded to you with, wow, or we haven't seen
Yes.
any difference. What?
No, they have, and that's what I was saying earlier about, they did know, we didn't tell the school what we were doing, and they came to me and said, oh, Christian is so much more alert this fall, you know, or what have you guys been up to? I mean, he just seems, he's really on his game, and he's just alert, and he's willing and interested in learning. What's up? And we said, oh, yeah, you know, he's just sleeping better. It's great, I tell you. That's what sleep will do for you. You know, it's kind of therapeutic. What can I say? You know, eat your vegetables, get plenty of sleep, drink all your water. Yeah.
Kim, real quick.
Yeah.
What percentage did you say y'all been using?
The oil that we have is 0.015% THC, and we give him 0.35 milliliters.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, next up, and our final speaker before our break, Jimmy Wages. Again, Mr. Wages, if you'll just quickly tell us who you are and why you're here and get right into your presentation. Thank you.
My name is Jim Wages. My wife and I, Lisa, live in Dallas, Georgia, along with our two daughters, Josie and Sydney. Josie is our oldest daughter, came first. We were so ecstatic that we didn't know what to do, so we had to have another. So we had Sydney. First of all, I want to thank the commission for allowing me to speak today and try to explain our story. And I want y'all to understand, I'm not a speaker. I don't speak to crowds this big. I don't even teach Sunday school. I don't even speak up in church. But I am a dad that passionately loves my children. Our journey with epilepsy started at the tender age of 4 months old. Shortly after the DTaP shot, Sydney had a fever. It spiked. She then had a seizure. She was at my wife's parents' home in Cedartown with her. At the time, they spend the night with them. The paramedics told us that this is common with fever. It's called a febrile seizure. Okay, well, it's new to us, but we accepted it and moved on. That all changed about 2 months later at 6 months old. Sydney had a seizure that lasted 45 minutes. At that time, I had to put my daughter on a helicopter to fly her to Scottish Rite Hospital, not knowing that I would see her alive again. I didn't know what we were facing here. Through a lot of prayer, we loaded in the car and went to Scottish Rite. Her seizure lasted from the time she was on the helicopter, or when it started at the home, till they got her at the hospital. It lasted over 45 minutes. That was the first of 6 life flights to Scottish Rite Hospital. Once she was flown twice within a 24-hour period. We found a neurologist. I went through our insurance and found a pediatric neurologist. He prescribed vitamin B6 to start with. That didn't help. Sydney was continuing having seizures. So at that time, we fired that doctor, and we came to Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, Scottish Rite. We went through the PAs, went through this. We ended up with a doctor, Dr. Flamini. Dr. Flamini has been great for us. But first of all, they prescribed her phenobarbital. Phenobarbital was one of the first go-to medicines for epilepsy in children. That you have to have a weaning process for y'all that don't know how this works. You have to start at a very low dose, titrate up over a period of time. Once that time is up, you prove that medicine not to work. Still at the higher dose. After that dose is proven not to work, you don't come off of it cold turkey. You have to wean off of that as well. But during that time, you have to start the second medication. You titrate it up, and at the time you're titrating it up, you're reducing the first one. So it's a juggling act. 7 failed medications, my daughter was still having seizures. We went to Scottish Rite for a video EEG with SPECT scan. It's a radioactive dye that's injected into her at the onset of a seizure. At that time, it goes to the origin of the seizure in the brain that tries to cool the brain. We went in that morning. We knew the protocol, give her medicine that morning. We was at Scottish Rite at 6 o'clock that morning. They stopped her medication that day. Sydney was having seizures constantly. She had a seizure that morning. Later on that day, they started to subside. Her medicine was taken away. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of that week, my child did not have a seizure. She was having multiple seizures a day. And for this child not to have a seizure in 3 days and look at me in the eye when I sing the Barney song to her, and I know my wife was tired of hearing the Barney song. But I would ask her, I says, "You want Daddy to sing again?" "Uh-huh." She would look me straight in the eyes and speak to me, and her eyes was clear as a bell. I asked the doctor then, I said, "Do we ever see seizures?" He said, "Eventually." Well, they put her back on her medication that Friday. We had to stay an extra week because of her seizures. After that, I asked my wife, I said, I think this is what's causing a lot of our issues. So at that time, we went to a follow-up doctor's visit, and I told the doctor at the time, I says, "I think this medication is causing most of our issues." I said, "We need to come off the medication." He says, "Well, we can come off some of it." I said, "No, sir, I think we need to come off all of it. You saw the video. You saw the EEG. We did not have any seizures for 3 days. You put her back on her medicine, we had seizures again." After that, he looked at me and he said, "You're playing with fire." I said, "Dr. Flamini, I want to repeat what you told me. Sometimes you have to weigh out the quality of life. My wife and I have talked about this, and we're willing to take that chance. Either one, we bury her, or two, these seizures are going to stop. But they're not going to stop taking this medication." He said, "That's your choice to make." At the time, she was taking Lamictal, Zonogran, and Topamax, and the Topamax dose was 200 milligrams a day. My daughter was so lethargic, she was just a living, breathing mass of a person. I would come in from work, and I would say, "Hey, sweet, how are you today? Did you have a good day today?" And all I got was a blank stare. She was so high on the pharmaceuticals, she didn't even know she was in the world. You could cut her arm off. She would not flinch. You would draw blood for liver enzymes, like the other parents have testified. We had to go every 6 weeks and have liver enzymes checked to make sure that these medications weren't affecting her liver too much. We made that decision to remove her from the medication at the age of about 8 years old. It took about 16 months to wean her off of the 3 medications. After we had her weaned off, she started to walk. She started to function in life. She was open, she was coming alive. She was not doped up anymore. Until one night we were sitting there and my wife's cousin called and said, "Hey, they're going to have a special on CNN tonight with Dr. Sanjay Gupta about medical marijuana for children with seizures." "Oh, cool, we'll watch it and see." So we hurried home, we turned the television on, I was following along on the computer on the website. My wife was watching the show, Sydney was sitting here, and at that time, it was a story about a little girl named Charlotte Figi. I'm sure much of you have seen this family. I was sitting there, and with tears in my eyes, I looked at Lisa, my wife. I said, "Honey, I think this is our last resort." Well, we started doing some research. We went away from medical doctors for a while. We studied chiropractic and naturopathic doctors. Our naturopathic doctor found a company that had hemp oil capsules. So we would take and order those, break them open, put them in some applesauce, and feed them to her every day. We started to see a little bit of results. But it got to where I went into my retirement because it was costing us $1,200 a month for this medication for our daughter. And then I contacted a friend of mine, Charlie Watts, was a long-standing representative here in the Capitol. I said, Charlie, I need some help. I need to know how I can help with the medical marijuana bill that's coming up to be able to get this passed. He said, I will get you some numbers. So he called me that afternoon, and he said, I want you to call this gentleman. It's Representative Gravely. He's the representative on the south side of Paulding. And boy, did the friendship ever start there. I contacted Micah. He said, yes, sir. He says, we're going to help your daughter. I got involved when sort of toward the end of House Bill 885. I met some of the folks here, Shannon and Blaine, Corey, some of these ladies and gentlemen that were on the front lines of this. And when I did, I met such a wonderful group of passionate people. Hey, there's a whole group of me, you know. We're all fighting for the same cause here. And that night on Sine Die, when House Bill 885 did not pass, I held my child, and I said, honey, Daddy's not going to quit fighting. And we've not stopped yet. And I am not going to give up until we have it available here in the state of Georgia for these citizens to be able to obtain a safe, effective, proven plant called cannabis. Sydney, over the years, we started taking CBD. Much like the others, it didn't show us anything. It didn't have any effect. But now, she's taking THC, thanks to some generous people here in this state, that she's doing well. She will actually get me by the hand and take me to the table because she's hungry. She will be able to tell us when she's ready to go to sleep. She's nonverbal, but she's still communicating. We see people from time to time that haven't seen her in a year's time, and they say, oh my gosh, what an improvement. I see her every day. I guess I don't see that improvement, but other people tell us that. And at that time, we know something's working. I just want to thank this commission again for that, and if there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sure a lot of people here are aware that there was recently a pharmaceutical-grade CBD product called Epidiolex that was approved by the FDA in June, expected to get rescheduled in some fashion by the DEA within a 90-day period. Epidiolex will then be available for Dr. Fellini to prescribe, and you could pick it up at your local pharmacy. What would you say to the people that say, but that's your option, you should use this for Sydney, you don't need anything else?
Well, first of all, when the Epidiolex study was being done here at the Georgia Regents University, we had talked to Dr. Flamini about that. Unfortunately, Sydney is not taking any pharmaceutical medicine right now other than just cannabis oil. So therefore, we was not able to be used in the study with Epidiolex. Epidiolex, from what I understand, is CBD only with no allowance of THC in it. The only thing we found to help Sydney with her Dravet syndrome, she has a diagnosis of Dravet syndrome now, is the THC oil.
May I ask this question? Could you tell us how old Sydney is right now?
Sydney is 15 years old. She turned 15 in July 7th this year.
And she's been off of the pharmaceuticals for how long?
About 6, going on 7, 8 years now.
Okay. When she was on those pharmaceuticals, were those adult level percentage doses that she was having to take?
Yes, sir. I spoke with a friend of mine the other day that also has epilepsy and is taking Topamax. She was a grown adult, and her dose is 75 milligrams a day is what she takes. Sydney was at 34 pounds taking 200 milligrams a day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wages. No further questions.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, that concludes our speakers for the first segment. We're going to take a 10-minute break. We're going to reconvene at 25 after. So actually, you got about a 7-minute break. All right, everyone, if you take your seats, let's get rolling. All right, I hope everybody enjoyed their break. If we could get it quiet and bring this meeting back to order. Okay, next on the agenda, we have Dr. Greg Raduca. If you would please approach the podium. And same thing, if you would introduce yourself and any organization you represent, and then go right into your presentation.
Well, thank you, Senator Brass and members of the commission. Very delighted to be here today. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to make a presentation, and I appreciate the compassion that the commission members have. I appreciate all the other witnesses who have been here today. I'm Dr. Greg Raduca. I'm with the Executive Director of Let's Be Clear, Georgia. 40 years of my life have been around substance abuse prevention and treatment. It's a very different kind of world than we're hearing about today. We got a glimpse of it when Daryl Rogers spoke. I was so glad Daryl could be here today. Thank you so much for sharing your story. With my background in prevention and treatment, I've heard a lot of stories like Daryl. I've spoken with a lot of parents who have lost their children to marijuana or lost their children to another drug that marijuana led to. And in a little bit, I'm going to speak about why THC is not all that different from what we think of as marijuana. So I want to make it clear from the get-go, my life has been about helping people, especially helping young people, adolescent chemical dependency units, and so forth. This is not a war on drugs, it's a defense of our brains. Let's Be Clear, Georgia tells you a little bit about us and what we do. Again, heart goes out to those who are suffering so much, as we've heard here today. But there is an untold story. For the first time, perhaps, you've heard a bit of that untold story with Mr. Rogers' presentation. I attend substance abuse prevention conferences around the country, and there are hundreds of people in the room about the marijuana presentations because THC is becoming legalized in so many more states now. And substance abuse professionals, treatment professionals are very, very concerned about the rise that they're seeing in the addiction rates and the abuse rates in marijuana. Those are just a couple of the effects that THC has, just a couple of them, maybe the most serious because they're deadly. So how does this relate to access? Well, the cost of increasing access via in-state cultivation, manufacturing, as well as regulation, that has to be financed. The money's going to have to come from somewhere to do that, and it's going to put more Georgians in harm's way when that occurs. 5% THC oil is much stronger than people think it is, and it's much stronger than I thought it was as well before I got some independent verification from several labs, a clinical pharmacologist. 4 drops of THC oil contains 10 milligrams of THC, and that's a lot of THC, 4 drops of 5% THC oil. 10 milligrams is what's in a standardized serving of an edible in Colorado. Edibles like chocolate bars. And now Colorado has had to make the law such that edibles need to be labeled, and that label concerns 10 milligrams of standardized serving in each chocolate bar. So just like it doesn't really matter the container that alcohol is in, it can be Johnny Walker Blue Label, or it can be Mad Dog 2020. Alcohol is alcohol, and if you drink more of the Mad Dog 2020, you're going to get just as drunk as if you drink scotch. So it's similar with THC. I know that the THC bottle looks a lot nicer. It sounds a lot nicer to say THC oil rather than pot, rather than dope. But really, it amounts to the same thing. Whether you swallow it, whether you smoke it, it's still THC, which is the psychoactive ingredient in marijuana that causes the effect. So people can get just as drunk from either of these. People can get just as high or impaired on the road driving, or just as addicted. The brain or body doesn't know if one is taking in medical THC or recreational THC. It has the same effect on the body, has the same effect on the driver. So unfortunately, one can be just as dead from an accident on medical THC as they can on recreational THC. So it's something of a false distinction. The major difference between medical marijuana and recreational marijuana is what's on the label. You know, one says it's medical, and the other says it's recreational. So in the law, HB 65, medical cannabis is also mentioned, and perhaps the commission is not going to study medical cannabis in general. I sure hope they don't, because that would open the door to a wide variety of problems and issues for Georgia, because medical cannabis can mean just about anything. As you see here, it can mean cotton candy. I think everyone can see that says medical cannabis cotton candy. And I know that may not be the intention right now, and certainly it isn't among members of the commission. However, we're also dealing with a billion-dollar industry seeking to become a second big tobacco. And we're going to hear more about that in later commission meetings, so I won't talk about that now. But we've got to take a look early on about branding and all kinds of other issues that are going to come up, because when I address a high school audience of young people, I ask them, how many think marijuana is a medicine? Just about every hand goes up in a 6th grade class, 8th grade class, 10th grade class. It's very unintended by the members of the commission. But we're at a point now where more Georgia kids are smoking marijuana than tobacco. We're at a point where marijuana use is going up in Georgia, according to the National Household Survey, the NSDUH it's called, which is a very prestigious survey that's done around the country. So marijuana use is not going down, it's going up in Georgia, while alcohol and tobacco use is going down. So we've got to be very concerned. Also, where the real money is to be made is in the high percentage THC products, earwax, shatter. All this is called medical cannabis in other states now that are further along the line. Again, the distinction between medical marijuana and recreational can be a false one in some ways. And I know the intentions, again, are very good about medical marijuana, except that many states experience their spike in use when they pass broad medical marijuana bills. When you pass something like intractable pain, and this is very unfortunate for people who legitimately experience intractable pain, but that can be pretty easily faked with a physician. Also, physicians don't need a DEA license to certify for medical marijuana, something which I hope the commission will look into. You can lose your license to prescribe and still be able to certify for medical marijuana. And that's drawn a lot of physicians to Florida who have lost their DEA license because Florida has a much broader medical marijuana law than we do. So the big spike happens when commercialization can happen, medical marijuana, and you get a lot of people using it who falsely claim to have things like intractable pain or chronic pain. Patients in California, other states, 90% or so are saying they have chronic pain. So, as I mentioned, broad medical legalization can lead to de facto recreational It's just as if we were recreational, if our medical legalization gets too broad. That was my presentation.
Any questions from the committee? Dale Jackson.
Thank you for coming and testifying today before the commission. I understand the premise that you tried to tie the two together concerning alcohol and THC. However, I know for myself and for many of the other families, there's other conditions that go along with the THC, obviously the different cannabinoids that can be added to the ratios and so forth. But also the most important aspect of that is the difference between smoking a joint and the THC entering your bloodstream within 10 to 12 minutes versus the oils that we very specifically choose, the base oils. And I was just curious if you've actually studied the benefits or the differences of how it affects the body in maybe what I would believe a true medical form and way with the long fatty acids in the oils such as safflower oil, coconut oil, and so forth and so on. Because when we give our child oil at 7:35 in the morning, it has to last in his bloodstream until he gets home around 3:30. So there's a huge difference in the way in which the THC is delivered into his bloodstream. And I would, one, curious if you've looked into that, or two, advise you to maybe consider that in your studies.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that a slower psychoactivity can also have a downside in that, and this is one reason why Colorado had to label their edibles with 10 milligram maximums, is that when it is consumed in that way in an edible, it takes a longer time to get high. And so people don't think that it's working, and so they will take more of the edible in order to reach that high. And I know we're not talking about your son or wanting to get high by any means, but it can be the same effect whether it's medical or whether it's recreational. So it's just a concern in that sense.
Okay. One more here. And that's a very valid point. I would leave you with the comment that my pastor's wife told me, who was his teacher at my son's special needs school, that once he was on the oil for his autism, it was almost like the static noise in the earphones came off, and she personally was able to teach my son how to feed himself and how to communicate that it's time to go to the bathroom. So I certainly have seen side effects. I'm just not complaining about my side effects.
I'm glad that it's working. Again, I come from this other world of substance abuse treatment and prevention, and I would invite any of you to visit a substance abuse treatment facility with me. When I worked at Ridgeview Institute in Cobb County, adolescent chemical dependency program, we did an adolescent drug inventory, and just about every adolescent there was there for one of their drugs of choice being marijuana. And that was a while back when THC used to be 2%, 3%, 4%. So certainly 5% is enough to get a lot of people high and a lot of people addicted.
We got another question from Chairman Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the gentleman, and thank you for being here. What type of what is your profession? You're a doctor. What kind of doctor?
My doctorate is in human development, developmental psychology.
Psychologist.
Developmental.
I heard what you had said, and I want to remind you that we're talking about medicinal, the study of medicinal purposes of marijuana, not recreational. But I do have a concern, and that's especially when I hear people talk about the DUIs and all these other type of effects. I saw a report the other day that came across my desk that last year there was 70,000+ citizens in the country that had died from opioid addiction. Didn't talk about the difference in car wrecks or driving under the influence. I can tell you for a fact that probably one of the hardest issues that I have to deal with constituents, and that's it, when they get a DUI and they'll call and they say, but I wasn't drinking. I was taking the pills that the doctor gave me, so that must make it right. Well, that seems to be an attitude, because I don't think doctors tell these folks don't be driving. You can be under the influence and driving under the opioids. So I keep hearing all the talk about driving under the influence, and too many people don't understand that just because it's a legal prescription, that they're also driving under the influence, and they are certainly subject to have automobile accidents. But trying to tag medical prescribed marijuana for these illnesses, I'm trying to get that connection between all of this, or the disconnect.
Well, thank you for asking that question. And just parenthetically, 88,000 people a year die from alcohol. So the alcohol epidemic is worse than the opioid epidemic in terms of numbers of death. Unfortunately, with marijuana, even though it's so prevalent, it's very hard to measure in the system. And Georgia is not really measuring impaired drivers or deceased drivers hardly at all. In 2016, there were approximately 460,000 crashes. Only 15 of those were tagged as having been associated with marijuana. That's got to be an underestimate. It's tougher. It's going to be more expensive to measure drivers who are marijuana or a marijuana metabolite, but it's so worth doing, because we know that people are dying on our roads from marijuana THC intoxication, but we're not measuring it. And so a parent like Daryl, who may have lost their child to THC impaired driving, either their own accident or being hit by somebody, would never know that. So a parent wouldn't know the reason for their own child's demise, because Georgia's really not measuring it, but to any great extent. And we really need to do that, and I hope we'll see legislation next session that would really strengthen the testing for marijuana in impaired and in deceased drivers.
Thank you for that, but I guess what I'm saying is, it seems to me to be some of the discussion is trying to tag the evils of driving under the influence to medical purposes, of using marijuana for medical purposes. So I guess my question to be would, should your discussions and some of your arguments, should you not be more in line to join with Mothers Against Drunk Driving instead of a dialogue about trying to find a purpose for marijuana to use for these medical problems that we have? And that being said, can you tell? But that being said, could you give me any feel about the death rate that has been directly attributed to the use of marijuana, that marijuana has caused how many deaths? And I'm not talking about treated marijuana or laced marijuana or anything. I'm talking about marijuana that might be used for medical purposes. Is there any numbers that you have for that?
Well, the best numbers would be this slide that I showed you before, where you can see that recreational legalization didn't occur in Colorado until 2013. So before then, all those drivers who tested positive were testing positive for medical marijuana. And there is more stats from the HIDA report in Colorado, High Intensity Drug Trafficking Agency, a federal law enforcement agency, that shows the rising number of DUIs and deaths on Colorado's highways after broad marijuana legalization was legalized. So that would be probably the closest, because again, in a person's bloodstream, there's no way to distinguish whether that's medical THC or recreational THC. So studies like this would be the best way to find that out. Well, other than going back and looking at the history of the driver, if they had a medical card at the time they were driving.
Well, one way you could look at it is to take out the number of people that actually had a medical card in Colorado, Do we have those numbers?
I will look into that, but the HIDA report is like 186 pages long of the negative effects that have been happening, and a lot of those pages have to do with DUIs and traffic deaths. So I will be happy to look into that for you.
I've got a follow-up question.
I guess the last thing I wanted to ask, though, I mean, I noticed when you referred back to your chart, we're back into the driving statistics. But can you tell me, as a learned professional, is there any numbers out there about how many people have OD'd, have given up their have lost their lives due to the use of marijuana, primarily? And I mean, there's no way of, I don't guess there's any way of diffusing what's the difference between recreational or medical. But can you tell me of any numbers out there that people have OD'd and died from the use of marijuana that's straight up and down something that the good Lord has let grown natural?
Yeah, there are studies that have been done, particularly in the city of San Diego, by Dr. Rajiv Lev, and I don't have those statistics with me, but I can get those for you. I'm hesitant to say how many deaths there were in just the city of San Diego that she found various reasons due to that were marijuana related. I want to say it was 300, but please don't hold me to that because I'd have to check that stat. But recently, Dr. Lev did a presentation at the Community Anti-Drugs Coalition of America conference, and she presented something called the death diaries. And those death diaries have to do with deaths via marijuana in the city of San Diego. You can't overdose on marijuana, it's true, but you can't overdose by smoking a pack of Philip Morris either, but a lot of people die from tobacco.
Thank you, Dr. Raduca. No further questions. Next up, we got Jenny Helms. If you would approach. And while Jenny's coming up, I want to take this time to recognize all our state representatives and state senators that have taken time out of their busy day to come be a part of this. So thank y'all for being here. And I will let y'all give them a round of applause. Ms. Helms, if you would introduce yourself.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, I'm Jenny Helms. I'm president of Leading Age Georgia, and we're the trade association that supports the mission-based, faith-based organizations that serve older adults. And here in Georgia, we represent everybody from the adult day to the in-home care providers, assisted living, nursing homes, life plan communities, et cetera, hospice. And what we find is that a large percentage of our members are experiencing pain, the older adults that they serve, whether it's pain from Parkinson's or from neuropathy or intractable pain from debilitating arthritis. There's a lot of pain. And right now, the options are opioids, which are not very good, and we're trying to decrease those, and the NSAIDs, which cause damage to the kidneys and to the liver. And so we're seeing that this is working in other states with the medical marijuana, and we want to see it here. So yesterday I sent you all a podcast about it, and we just want to say we want to make sure it's accessible to those in long-term care. So when you're working on the accessibility rules, we need to pay attention to who can pick it up, how it's dispensed, who can administer it, et cetera. Because I think in nursing homes you can find that 60 to 80% of people often experience pain, and so we just really want to make sure that it's accessible to the older adults. And I do think that we really need to pay attention to the overuse of opioids. I think we really need to pay attention to quality of life at end of life, and I hope that you will work hard to make this available to Georgia's older adults. Thank you.
Ms. Helms, are you aware of any current patients under y'all's umbrella that are currently using oil?
Yes, I sent you a podcast yesterday via email, if you'll listen to it, and it's from the Hebrew home in New York, where the oil was used very carefully. The Hebrew home worked with their board, with their residents, with their families, and identified 12 individuals who really wanted to try it. It was done under the supervision of their medical director, who was both an internist and a geriatrician, and they found that it helped very much. And what they found was that, like, one woman whose neurologist told her not to take it, but her pain from the Parkinson's was so intense that she decided to try it, and she found that she was pain-free, and she was very surprised to be pain-free for the first time in several years. And what she found was she felt well enough to leave her room and engage in activities. And the CEO of the Hebrew Home said that this was happening with our other residents. And while there have been limited studies in the United States, we're hearing from a geriatric psychiatrist that I consulted with that they're seeing this in Europe and Canada where it's more readily available. We want to make it available here, and we particularly want to make sure that those in long-term care settings have access.
How are they getting it? I mean, what's that process? I mean, you talked about them getting approved and all that, but if they're in the home, I mean, most of them aren't physically able to leave that home. Does it come, to a central person in, staff member? Do we know that? I mean, I'm just trying to get a feel for that
That's the piece
process.
that we'll need help with. But, just think about it. In nursing homes right now, these folks are on opioids, and this is less harmful than that. So we'll want a similar delivery system to that. At the Hebrew Home in New York, it was the family members who obtained it, and that's a little bit of a hardship. So I think we could put together a committee, perhaps of our consulting pharmacists, because all of our long-term care settings have the pharmacists who could help, as well as the nurses, some of the CEOs. But we'd love to put together a team of folks to ask. We'd love to look at how they do it in other states as well. I think even in New York, the access problem was a problem. We need to get it more readily available than it is.
Well, if y'all need help putting together a committee, that's something we're really good at. So.
Thank you so much.
All right, hang on one. We got a question.
Thing that we're talking about is access, and different states have approached whether you can deliver the product to the homes or to the facilities like yours versus not have delivery. And New York is one of them that started out not allowing delivery of the product by the dispensaries, but now they've started allowing delivery. What is your perception of, would it be good for you guys to have the dispensaries be able to deliver the product to your facilities? Or not? What's your thinking on that?
We definitely need the delivery. A lot of times people living in long-term care don't have families who can go and pick it up for them, and that's a big challenge, particularly those in nursing homes. A lot of times when you see people residing in nursing homes, it's because they don't have family. So we definitely need it to be able to be delivered.
Ms. Clow?
Similar to the delivery issue, we've encountered a lot of patients here in Georgia, whether it's their parent in a long-term facility or it's their child or teenager that may be in a residential facility. The staff at those facilities are not permitted to administer the oil. So the family member is having to leave their home in the middle of the day, maybe several times a day, go there and administer the oil because the staff, whether it's the local or a governing organization for that organization that won't allow them. Is that an issue that you've encountered?
Yes, it is. And one area that we particularly see this is when a person is terminally ill and a staff person not being able to administer the morphine. And you all know that we have a significant staff shortage, nurse shortage here in Georgia. So that makes it problematic. And the more that we can make it available to be used on site versus waiting for somebody else to show up, a family member or someone else, the better it's going to be. I don't know how many of you all have been with a person that is at end of life with bladder cancer and seen the level of pain that there is, but it's significant, something we wouldn't wish on anybody. And having availability of the medical marijuana or the THC oil will make a big difference in the quality of life there at the end. So yes.
No further questions. Thank you. All right, next up we have Virginia Galloway. If you would approach the podium. Again, Ms. Galloway, if you'll introduce yourself and who you represent and go right into your talk. Thank you.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you. I'm Virginia Galloway. I'm the Regional Director for Faith and Freedom Coalition. And I want to thank you guys particularly for setting the tone of having civil conversations around this. This has been a hot issue down here for, 5 years now. And There have been a lot of conversations, some civil and some not so civil, and I just appreciate you setting that tone. I actually, it's funny, a young man who I'd never met kind of jumped on my Facebook and, wanted to fight with me about this. And we ended up, I decided not to take offense at that, and we ended up having a really great and productive and mutually informational conversation. And I think we can do that, and so I'd encourage everybody to keep that tone. At Faith and Freedom Coalition, well, first, let me say this. We have been talking about this for a long time, and I've kind of been here since the beginning. It was kind of one of my first issues with Faith and Freedom Coalition, among many others that we work on. And I did tell this young man I knew more about marijuana and casino gambling than any grandmother ever ought to. So anyway, but what we do at Faith and Freedom is we are advocates for moral responsibility, for fiscal responsibility, and there are a lot of businesses who will not speak up on a hot issue because, frankly, they don't want to be targeted. They don't like conflict. They want to stay away from it. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the business end of that because Georgia certainly, rightfully so, takes pride in being a business-friendly state. And we're concerned that as medical access is made easier by in-state cultivation, that consumption will skyrocket as it has in every other state where access has been granted, including teenagers and working-age adults. The business model for medical marijuana doesn't really work well. If you've got 5,400 customers and you have 5 different facilities. I remember a couple of years ago in one of these hearings that the question was asked, how much does it cost to set up, a lab that creates access to this oil and has all the security measures that I think people want? And the answer was, I believe, $2 million just to set up. You're going to have a lot of customers to support that. So again, I think, it's pretty clear that you're going to see an uptick in use that's pretty big. So you might say, well, these business issues are going to not be affected by the medical marijuana, but in fact, I think they really are. Because for one thing, we have medical privacy laws. And so you have federal law that says, you can't ask your employee what medicines they're using, what conditions they have, all those kind of things. And so I just wonder how a company is going to know that. If they're going to be allowed, if you're going to make some concession in your access bill to these companies to allow them to be able to protect other people in their workforce and to protect themselves. And to protect that worker. And I've got a couple of stories about that, but I want to talk for a minute about workforce, just being able to find workforce. One of the things that makes Georgia attractive, we put a lot of investment into education and those kind of things in this state. And we have a pretty good workforce, but I will tell you, I know a contractor personally very well who spent one solid week trying to find 3 people to paint a building that could pass a drug test. A solid week. He called one crew after another, and he said, you're going to have a drug test before you go in. And they're, I can't do that. So, this is a problem, and we need to address it. On the litigation side, a lawyer friend of mine told me a story about a company that he represented that had a man come into work who was impaired. And again, it doesn't matter if you're impaired. Your impairment is not affected by what's on that label, whether it's called medical marijuana or whether it's called recreational marijuana. This guy was impaired. He went into work. He caused a horrendous accident that killed only himself, okay? But it could have been much worse. It could have killed other people. He dropped a really heavy item, and it crushed him to death, breath by breath. And, just a tragic situation. he was impaired by marijuana. He was found to have it in his bloodstream. But the family sued the company, and they paid out and settled around $1 million. And that is just something that we have got to start thinking about, is the litigation and the liability that happens when you have increased access and increased usage. There is some employer protection language, I understand, in the medical bills right now. If any of that is changed in any way, I think it needs to be strengthened because there's legal liability, contractual problems for employers who are required by state and or federal law to maintain a drug-free workplace. There's already talk out there about just getting rid of that. With a lot of people I know working in construction, I hope they don't get rid of that because, again, there's danger to people who are not using or abusing or whatever. One example is commercial driver's license. Those drivers are under federal DOT drug and alcohol testing requirements. Companies that have a state contract in excess of $25,000 or a federal contract in excess of $100,000 have to maintain a drug-free workplace. What are we going to do with that? Also, it undermines the state law enacted by the Georgia legislature in 1993 that makes a state-mandated discount on workers' compensation insurance available to state-certified drug-free workplaces. So again, we cause legal liability for more than 7,500 state-certified drug-free workplaces that we have in Georgia. That's a lot of employers to have a problem. So while we're working on this supply issue, I hope that we'll remember the practical implications for business and come up with some solutions there. We really can't pass enough laws to solve all these problems because we have a culture that frankly is just, it's been just grown exponentially with promoting marijuana as medicine. And I understand there's two sides to that story of people who benefit and that kind of thing, but we also need to look at who is hurt and what we can do in a really serious way. I mean, there's a lot of joking. I'm down here at the Capitol. I hear a lot of joking about this. Not really funny to me, just got to say, because I know people who have suffered greatly with problems related to marijuana, parents, children, a lot of children in our DFAC system right now because their parents are not responsible because of drug use. So anyway, that's all I've got to say, and I'll answer any questions that anyone has. Oh, I do have one more thing. I'm sorry. There's a booklet that a group put out that I think is really super. It's called What Will Legal Marijuana Cost Employers? And that is not just talking about recreational. It's just any legal marijuana. It talks about litigation, safety, compliance, productivity, and flexibility. I have the website that you can download that from, and I will ask them to pass this down to you guys so that you can look at it at your leisure. But I think it's an excellent book, and I would highly recommend it. It's a white paper that's well researched.
Thank you, Virginia. I'm going to paraphrase you here. You said we cannot pass enough laws to put in necessary protections. And I think you underestimate this legislature. We pass a lot of laws. But
you do, and I get that, and I respect good intentions, but we also know that when you have a culture that is pushing one way, that really there's not enough law that can be passed. Even the best laws are not going to hold down everything that you want it to.
I want to go back to your contractor friend that said he couldn't find enough workers because of drug tests. How many of those people that failed drug tests had a medical THC oil card?
Well, the interesting thing is none of them would even go and take the drug test. They didn't fail the test. They just refused to even show up for the job. Mm-hmm. So I don't know the answer to that.
So we don't know that answer. Okay, thank you. Dale.
Ms. Virginia, thank you. We've known each other for a very long time in the Republican Party and here at the Capitol, and I do appreciate you coming today and engaging in civil discourse. I think it's something that we can accomplish, and this commission is committed to that. And as someone, as an employer of roughly 100 employees, it's something that we face. And I've actually been working with Congressman Ferguson at the federal level. I'm very happy about the bill he co-sponsored that protects patients in various states that have the legal cards from being fired from their federal employer. And I hope that passes. But my question, you brought up the possibility of employer protection and employees at work. Why could we not, because I'm assuming that those same protections already exist for opioids, because everybody apparently takes opioids, and more than likely they come to work. So I'm assuming, have you looked into what are the current opioid laws, and why could we just not apply those same laws as far as your point of employer protection and just apply them the same?
That'd be okay with me. I really, opioids are yet another grandmother non-specialty that I've had to start learning about. I haven't really gotten all the way up to speed on that, I'll admit. I've attended a couple of conferences. I recognize that that's a problem, and actually opioid abuse is a problem that is usually preceded by marijuana abuse. 94% of people who abuse opioids have abused marijuana first. So, you know, I think they're very related, so that's a great question.
Okay. My point of view is that normally people come to me to try to get off of opioids with cannabis, but thank you again.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Ms. Galloway, thank you for being here today. I'm James Woodruff, and I'm the sheriff of Troup County, and I certainly appreciate your argument. Every day I meet with parents about their children that are on drugs. I meet with spouses about their spouse that's on drugs. And this is not a smart comment, but never have I met with one that said my son is hooked on medical marijuana. Usually it's meth, usually it's heroin, a lot of times it's opioids. And to Dale's point about people going to work, and I think Mr. Powell said, people go to work all the time and take pain medication. And on the bottle it says, do not operate machinery, and they still do that every day. And to the fact that I've got about 550 people in my jail today, and I would be willing to say 80% of them are there due to some kind of drug abuse, whether it's robbery or domestic violence or theft or you name it. It's tied around drug abuse.
Yeah, we've got a serious problem.
If I thought for 1 minute that me sitting on this commission would make that situation worse, I wouldn't be sitting here. I'd be in Troup County. I'm here because I believe, and I know there are people in our state, men and women and children, and I've seen some of them, that need help. And it's proven that this does help them. And I want to make this commission, I want to be part of this commission and make it as safe as we can to not give it to people to abuse, but really help those in need. And that's really why I'm here. But I thank you for your views.
And thank you for that, and I appreciate it. I would like to say that you're right. You don't normally hear a parent crying that their child is addicted to medical marijuana at this point, but we've just opened up, you know, a lot of different conditions. And, you know, your brain, as Dr. Raduca, who is, I mean, just stellar in his field. I mean, he opened the Ridgeview Institute Drug Treatment Center. He was the man responsible for that years ago, and so he has tons of experience here. But the part of your brain that recognizes and forms an addiction doesn't read a label. It doesn't know if it's medical marijuana or it's some other kind of marijuana. Addiction breeds more addiction. Unfortunately, it kind of gets that part of your brain activated. And so my understanding from what I've heard at conferences that I've gone to on this issue is that no matter what the addiction is, it can be video games, it can be, you know, a number of different things. You start that addiction center going, it's much easier that pathway is kind of smoothed in your brain for other addictions. So that I just want us to be careful. Look, I hope that anybody would realize that a person who has 5 grandchildren and 4 children does not want people suffering and hurting. That's not my goal at all. I want people helped. I also want to make sure that we don't hurt a whole lot of other people in the process. So I just would caution the committee to be really careful about that.
Thank you to my fellow citizen in Paulding County.
That's right.
We have had conversations about this in the past,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm glad to say I think we've always had civil conversations.
We have.
They've been robust at times.
That's right. We're robust people.
And yes, and I, you know, looking back on that, I'm thankful for those conversations because I think it challenges us to dig deeper in why we believe what we believe. A serious question: if we were able to find that center area, or whether it be that perfect point or that center area where we could, knowing that we have high levels of addiction with opioids currently being prescribed by the FDA, if we could find that lane where we are able to provide this medicine to the people in our state that need it, that are registered, to where we have that robust medical registry system. We know the people on the system. We know the ones who have the cards. The ones who have the cards are using the oil. We're able to protect employers. We're able to have a system much like Mr. Jackson referred to, was the same regulations that are on opioids in the workplace, the same protections that employers have when it comes to those types of prescription medications. We're able to put this in that same lane, that the same cautions and protections are there. We're able to have robust law enforcement at the table. Is that a lane you could be in with me to support if we're doing it and answering those concerns and making sure that just the folks that need that medicine is getting that medicine, and we have those regulatory procedures around it? Is that something we could share there?
Possibly. This is a complex issue, as we all know by now. And so there are many facets to this issue. I spoke to this years ago when we had a committee meeting. I brought up 5 different areas that I had concern about. And many of them have come to pass already. Access was one of my concerns. Okay, we make this legal. How do they get it? Oh, don't worry about it. You know, that's what I was told. But here we are. You know, I'd almost have to write another booklet for you. But I mean, I'm willing to have a discussion. Everybody wants to help people who are suffering. I think we laid that out first, and we all agree on that. And I hope that we all agree that nobody wants to make any more laws that have unintended consequences that hurt a whole lot of other people. So that's kind of a hard balance to reach. I don't know if it's possible or impossible, but I'm always willing to talk.
Thank you.
I'm going to quote a movie, Dumb and Dumber. So you're saying there's a chance.
Yep.
Ms. Galloway, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
No further. Oh, I'm sorry. One question.
Okay.
Representative Clark.
Thank you. Thank you, Virginia. Just wanted to say, one thing I do keep hearing from those who are against the medical marijuana is they keep bringing up the addiction every time. And, I mean, from what my research and looking at it, that somebody cannot go into a treatment center for marijuana alone. They don't take that as an addiction, from what I hear. And so it has to be other drugs, other hardcore drugs.
That's a Dr. Gregg question. He is saying no, that is not correct.
More adolescents are in treatment for marijuana than any other illegal drug. You can be admitted just on marijuana, especially these days.
Because I've had someone, actually a colleague of mine, called a number of treatment centers around Georgia, and they said, no, we don't handle that. You know, it needs to be other drugs. I'm just saying from what one of my colleagues actually called. And so I just feel like a lot of times when you say an addiction, it's usually almost every time there's a lot of other drugs. There's so many other things, and we keep making this marijuana this deadly, evil thing. And I hope on this whole study committee that we do in these next few months that we know it has huge positive scientific proof of showing it's helping children, it's helping adults, and we're seeing that. So I hope that we can come together, not just clashing, but like coming together, because we know it helps. I just had a little baby girl 3 months and like 2 weeks ago, and she's my world. And when I was hearing, you know, Jimmy talk about his daughter and what it's done to help him and his family, we know it helps, and we've got to do something for the hurting Georgia, the children, the adults who are suffering. And I hope that we can instead find that balance. And I'm all about myself about saying, hey, we can put these barriers up to make sure that we're being careful, you know, to not go off the cliff. You know, I'm all about making sure we don't have unintended consequences down the road. But I think it's time, because we keep looking at the evidence overwhelming of how it helps. Keep bringing this addiction, keep bringing and saying it's, you know, somebody took this and this happened. I know it can happen, and you can try to attach it to the marijuana, but we know the positive side effects. And I think there's a balance we need to find as a state, as people are suffering, and they're suffering hugely. And we know that with the other medication of these parents using every other drug there is, and they see the side effects and what it's doing, that it's killing them. So, or it can kill them, and the side effects. So I just hope that we can come together on that, because we need to pass it. It needs to be done, but done in the right way. And I just encourage us to find that balance and know that it does help and it does save. And you can't overdose on it at all. Like opioids, you know, came out just the other day. You know, 70,000 plus easily have died this past year on overdoses. And this is definitely a way to help, because in studies it's shown that in the states that passed the medical marijuana and the cultivation, that's about the opioid overdoses around 25%. So we know it can save lives. So I just hope we can come together this fall and figure out a solution for next session to really help kids and people suffering.
Well, let's keep talking.
Thank you, Ms. Galloway. That's no further questions.
Thank you.
All right, next up we've got Terry Thrower. Ms. Thrower, we can get you a mic there or coming to the podium. Okay. While she's making her way up, you know, I think Representative Clark brings up a great point, and you know, that's why it's important that we hear from both sides of this issue. We all can agree that we have an opioid epidemic, and as we're moving through this process, we want to learn from those mistakes so that we don't create the same tornado that we have with that. So, but with that, we've got, again, Ms. Terry Thrower, if you'll just introduce yourself and a little bit about yourself while you're here, and go through your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for letting me speak to you all today. My name is Terry Thrower, and I'm here because I am a medical cannabis user. I'm already getting emotional about that. I have lived with chronic pain for 52 years. I have a condition called juvenile idiopathic arthritis, which is an autoimmune disease that destroys the cartilage and joints, and has destroyed the cartilage and joints throughout my body, including my spine, and caused my blindness. What vision I have in my left eye is there because I'm using an arsenal of pharmaceuticals to keep my glaucoma pressures below 15. I have been on opioids, steroids, NSAIDs, biologics, and experimental arthritis drugs, whatever it took to keep me in less pain and functioning. I brought the committee, or the commission, some handouts. I didn't bring slides. I apologize for that. On the left side of the page, is my full skeletal structure. And I want to point out that in the years between 2006 and 2015, I had 10 surgeries to revise or replace the joints in my lower body or fix broken bones. Prednisone causes glaucoma, and it also caused my bones to go soft, osteoporosis, early onset. Those surgeries caused some additional nerve damage, some of them, to my lower limbs, and I have neuropathic pain in my legs. And during that time, during that 9-year period, I was prescribed opioids during, before and after each surgery. So that's 9 solid years of opioid use. My first experience with medical cannabis was in Illinois when I tried to reduce my opioid intake with medical cannabis. And that was a lot of trial and error. I soon discovered that I did not like getting high from the higher THC strains that were offered at the dispensaries there. But I finally found a lower THC, higher CBD strain that worked for what I needed it to do without getting me loaded. The picture on the right is of my current cervical spine. We don't think about this, but our spinal column is also a series of joints connected via cartilage. And my debilitating condition was damaging and destroying the bones in my neck throughout my lifetime. In October of 2016, just 1 year after I finished my PhD in Chicago, I was experiencing symptoms of spinal cord compression. My hands started to go numb, and I was losing coordination, which for a blind woman is not a good thing. I was feeling electric-like shocks from my head to my toes, and I was stumbling and falling a lot. The test revealed that that my cervical spine was collapsing on itself and compressing the spinal cord. And I was told that if I didn't have a relatively urgent surgery to fuse my cervical spine, that I would become quadriplegic within a matter of months, and that my life expectancy would be a little more than a year. So that surgery left me unable to move my neck because it fused the bones with metal instrumentation from my skull to my third thoracic vertebra. It also decompressed my spinal cord and saved my life, for which I'm very, very grateful. But as a result, I'm left with ongoing spinal cord damage and peripheral neuropathy that is primarily located in my my shoulders and my neck area, the shoulder blade area, the upper back. At 2 months past that surgery, I was in recovery and rehab, and I realized I was taking opioids again full time. And so I used the medical cannabis that I had access to in Illinois to completely stop taking opioids for good. At 3 months post-surgery, my husband and I were ready to leave Chicago. And he asked me, "Where would you go if I died?" And I said, I would move to Georgia to be closer to my family. And fortunately for us, Representative Peak had championed medical cannabis oil, the low THC oil for peripheral neuropathy. And on the day that Governor Deal signed that into legislation, into law in the state, we were already packing our bags to move to Blairsville. Medical cannabis, I don't have any notes, so sorry for the pauses. Medical cannabis helps me to manage my symptoms. It helps me to function with the intractable pain and the peripheral neuropathy that I have, so that I can write, I can be here today, I can volunteer, I can visit with family and friends, and on occasion have some fun. As a bonus, it also reduces my glaucoma pressures, or it seems to, along with the other pharmaceuticals I take. I could not function at all without it. And it is as vital to me as food, shelter, and rest. Getting the oil is, on the other hand, a real pain. Currently, my husband, my guide dog, and I will drive 2.5 hours into Atlanta to meet up with the Good Samaritan, usually Shannon or Blaine, to pick up the bottle, and we're very grateful for their help. But that 5-hour road trip will cost me at least a day of rest and recovery once I get back home, because since the fusion and spinal cord damage, my energy and stamina are much less. So it's not convenient for anyone involved. In fact, the recommended dose for me is 3 times per day. And I've only been taking 2 so that I can make the bottle that I get last as long as possible, because I know it's so precious and hard to get. I fully support the conservative approach that Georgia has taken in implementing their low THC program. Not all Georgians need medical cannabis oil to function, but many of us do. And I believe that together, Georgians can create a system that works for people with better access, more affordable, high quality, regulated access to cannabis oil. And speaking for myself and many others, I'm depending on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thrower. You have one question from Sheriff Woodruff.
Ms. Thrower, I just got one question for you. What happens if this commission were to say we're not going to approve this? What would that do to you?
I want to stay in Georgia. I don't want to move, but I would have to. And I would not get to spend any time with my family in that way, because it's very hard for me to travel. I'm going to pay for this for a couple days at home, resting in the bed. But yeah, that's what it would mean.
Thank you, Ms. Thrower.
Thank you.
All right, as Ms. Thrower makes her way down, next will be our public comments. Now, we were supposed to adjourn at 3:30. We've got about 4 pages of people that want to speak. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to 4 o'clock. We're going to go through as many as we can. If everybody goes for 1 minute, we can pretty much get to everybody. If you go into 2 minutes, which is what I was hoping to allow everybody, then I'm only going to make it about halfway. So let's do this to speed this up. I'm going to call out a series of names, and y'all come up to the podium. We'll go 5 at a time. All right, so... And if you decide you don't want to speak, just wave off when I call your name. All right, so first up is going to be Heather Breeden, Jennifer Conforti, Christopher Bruce, Karen Tinker, and Reverend Gregory K. Davis. Again, we're not here to talk about recreational marijuana. We're not here to talk about anything but access. So please keep your comments limited to access, whether you're for or against, and just be very brief on what you want to say. So with that, we've got Heather Breeden, and also do a quick introduction of yourself and any organization you may represent. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Heather Breeden, and I serve as a Senior Manager of Advocacy for the National Multiple Sclerosis Society. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on the important work of the Joint Study Commission on Low THC Medical Oil Access. In the interest of time, I will quickly read my comments to you, and we'll be providing the committee a copy of these comments. We believe that people with MS are at the center of their healthcare decision-making. People living with MS should have the information and resources they need to make informed decisions and advocate for their health care, including the use of medical cannabis. People living with MS should have access to a comprehensive network of providers and healthcare services focused on producing the best outcomes at affordable cost. The Society encourages states to standardize pricing and distribution methods while we support research on the use and safety of medical cannabis. The Society encourages access to medical cannabis only in non-smokable forms. In addition, the Society supports further advancing research to better understand the benefits and potential risk of cannabis and its derivatives as a treatment for MS. MS is a disease of the central nervous system characterized by inflammation, demyelination, and degenerative changes. Symptoms vary by individual and range from numbness or tingling to walking difficulties, fatigue, dizziness, pain, depression, blindness, and paralysis. People living with MS may experience relapses and remissions of neurological symptoms, or their symptoms may progress over time. FDA-approved disease-modifying therapies are effective at limiting the number of relapses and disease progression. However, they do not specifically treat MS symptoms. Optimal symptom management requires a comprehensive approach, and THC oil can be used as a complementary therapy to manage MS symptoms, especially pain, spasticity, and urinary frequency.
Heather, I'm going to stop you there.
Okay.
As a son of a patient with MS, I appreciate all your work, but for sake of time, we're going to move to the next one. Jennifer Conforti, private citizen, tell us where you're from. And
otherwise known as Abby's mom. I live in Fayetteville, Georgia. I have a daughter who's 7.5 years old with severe autism and a congenital brain defect. She was severely injurious. She would harm herself quite a bit about 4 years ago, until I decided to figure out how in the world to make my own medical cannabis in my kitchen. I called a gentleman in California, and he told me I had to go buy an ounce of loud weed. I had to Google loud weed. I had no idea what that meant. I did. I knew somebody to call. I knew he could get it for me. He did. I made it that night. My daughter was on over 30 different pharmaceuticals and supplements trying to help her, those liver damaging, trying to help her stop hurting herself. And in 4 days after giving her cannabis, I had her off of her pharmaceuticals and solely on the medical cannabis. Here is the issue with access in this state. I still have to go on the black market and buy that loud weed. I have to buy an ounce of plant matter Sometimes I buy 3 or 4 ounces at a time. Y'all think I was out of the canna closet when I testified 2.5 years ago. I'm really out of the canna closet now. I have to buy the plant matter, buy a bottle, big old jug of Everclear. I do. I soak the plant matter in the Everclear, cook it down over double boiler, and what I'm left with is an unknown sludge. All I know is it works for my daughter. And through the years, I have figured out a particular strain. It's called sour diesel. A particular ratio of THCA to THC. There's very little CBD in my product. But I know it helps my daughter. Here's the deal. If we had access in the state of Georgia that I could go to a dispensary and say, here's what I need, here's what I have learned over the last 4 years works for my daughter, and a pharmacist or a registered individual with the state of Georgia could help me get that regulated, beautiful, clean, concentrated product, man, my life would be a lot easier and a lot less dangerous. I risk jail time for this, but I'll do it for my daughter. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. All right, next up, Christopher Bruce.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Chris Bruce. I am the Policy Counsel for the American Civil Liberties Union of Georgia, an organization that fights for the rights for everyone here today, and I will keep my comments brief so you can hear from the people. By not providing access to medical marijuana, Georgia is forcing concerned citizens, like you heard before, to break the law. The ACLU recently worked on a case of Susanna and Matthew Brill, parents of a 15-year-old son suffering from severe seizures. The two were charged with reckless conduct and lost custody of their child for trying to give him the only treatment that they found worked for his seizures, marijuana. After trying prescription medication, the Brill's family was left to acquire a more effective product, and now the Brill family, after being prosecuted by their local sheriff and prosecutor, had to actually leave the state. They are currently in Colorado Springs, Colorado, because they said they would rather treat their child out of this state than to actually be here in the state of Georgia. If Georgia were to implement a program for the cultivation and disposition of medical marijuana, the treatment would be readily available to those who need it, including the Brill family, those who are assisting others like Representative Alan Peake, and children like Haley Cox, the namesake of the original Haley's Hope Act. The current law purports to allow the use of marijuana for medical purposes, but fails to provide a legal means to access it. The Georgia General Assembly should immediately pass a comprehensive medical marijuana law. Georgia's families deserve to have more than an empty right without a remedy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bruce. Next up, Karen Tinker.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karen Tinker, and I'm here with the Council on Alcohol and Drugs. We're a nonprofit organization founded in 1969, and what I represent is the Drug-Free Workplace DOT division. So part of my job is to go out and give prevention education to workplaces and employers, and I'm here to talk about the employer aspect. I want everyone to get access that needs this medicine because I'm also a parent, and I'm a parent of somebody who's dealt with epilepsy for 15 years. So all these concerns, I've heard them. We have a VNS implant, and we've done all the prescription medicines over the last 15 years. My heart goes out to you. But I have a concern as a business professional. What happens in the safety-sensitive industries? Those who have the access to blow up a building if they're under the influence of any amount of THC. I urge this committee to consider that when they provide access. Somebody in the workplace needs to have a seat at this table to talk about the consequences when you have access. Under federal regulations, the safety-sensitive positions, such as your pilots, your bus drivers who transport your children to and from school, they can't have any detectable amount of THC in their system. I need that same security for a company that has somebody, an electrician that could blow up your building, an anesthesiologist who began giving the new mom an epidural. Those things need to be talked about and addressed, and I don't think that's been covered, but please look at the council for an opportunity for that seat. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Reverend Davis.
Thank you, Chairman Brass. And God bless you all. I've been honored to speak here, and appreciate all of you. I want to hand this out. It's a handout on, it's not on the access, it's on the problem you have in the law as it is current. We've got the Georgia Composite Medical Board is the institutional review board that's to be looking at these records. We've got over 5,000 patients right now in the database, and the Georgia legislature has tasked them with giving us the reports and how this working for Georgia right now. We're not hearing from LaShawn Hughes. We don't see anybody from the Georgia Composite Medical Board letting us know what this dangerous THC is doing to these 5,000 children or all these different patients. Well, what's going on with them? We don't know. And we don't know whether you even have a budget request.
Reverend Davis,
okay,
we'll be hearing from our physicians and doctors in our Savannah meeting.
All right, thank you. And so I just wanted to point out that the easiest, cheapest way to bring cannabis medicine into the state is to import it. We have a law on the books since 1980 that provides for importation. That can be modified to where we could import this. And moving forward in a grow, you have within the Department of Public Health the Cancer Control Center. So thank you for the 30-second warning. And I just wanted to point out, if you could review that Cancer Control Center within the Department of Public Health as the vehicle for the licensing and the regulated by the Department of Agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Davis. All right, next up, Sue, I'm probably going to butcher this, Rushy, that's what I said. Joseph McCrary, Nicole Buffon, and Lynn Williams. If y'all would all approach the podium. Sue, you'll be up first.
Thank you, it's Rushi.
Rushi, gotcha. Thank you, Miss Rushi.
Chairman Brass and Co-Chairman Gravely for allowing me to testify today. National Families in Action opposes legalizing marijuana cultivation to produce low THC oil and medicinal cannabis because there is no need to do this. Here's why. Hear me out, please. 1, patients will have access later this fall to low THC oil via Epidiolex. This drug is a purified marijuana extract that is 99% cannabidiol, or CBD. Patients already have access now to THC. Marinol and Sesamet are capsules containing 100% THC. Syndros, recently approved by the FDA, is liquid THC, and that can be combined with Epidiolex, meaning that you have safety and efficacy proven through the FDA. FDA has approved these drugs to treat epilepsy, chemotherapy-related vomiting, and AIDS wasting. But once approved by FDA, doctors can prescribe them off-label for any condition. These are nationally regulated products that contain no contaminants. Marijuana medicines that states have legalized are unregulated products. They often contain impurities that can hurt and sometimes have actually killed people. Visit the marijuanareport.org/tag/contaminants to see the problems that states are having with mold and mildew and pesticides and E. coli and salmonella in medical marijuana products that they have legalized. Legislators who say cultivating pot will not lead to recreational pot seem at best disingenuous. A member of this joint study committee is past president of a 5-year-old $100 million Atlanta medical marijuana company whose chairman plans to enter the recreational market. This company, Certera, has contributed to the campaigns of Georgia legislators, including another member of this committee. This seems to us like a major conflict of interest.
It's 2 minutes, Ms.
Again, thank you
Rushi.
very much, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
You have none. Mr. McCrary.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. If I speak too fast, if you can't hear me, just say something. Good afternoon. Thank you, Gon. Thank you again for letting me speak. My name is Joseph McCrary. I am a graduate student at Georgia State University for the Master's of Education. I'm going for a digital literacy master's. And I'm representing the state of Georgia, the citizens, the sick and tired people who are being sick and tired. And the main thing I like to address for brevity purposes is that I believe that Georgia can successfully operate a secure and regulated medicinal cannabis program that will benefit its citizens and their families, especially since Florida operated Soterra Wellness is headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia, and their business is doing extraordinarily well, so it's now one of 3 organizations licensed to cultivate, extract, and dispense approved medical marijuana in Texas. With this being said, I spoke with Mr. Peak earlier this year, and he also spoke that some schools in the state of Georgia will be allowed to grow. And may I also suggest that we have 2 land-grant state institutions in the state of Georgia, UGA and Fort Valley. Those 2 campuses are agricultural-based schools. They have a lot of resources, tools, and supplies, and land that can in-state cultivate for the state of Georgia. Also, you have 18 state Department of Health throughout the state of Georgia. And we also, if I'm not mistaken, we have universities and schools located within those regions. So if anything, we should be allowed to survey and see what schools will be allowed to grow and cultivate in those areas where we do have Department of Health. 30 seconds. And also with that, I represent the GDES, which is the Georgia Network Education Therapeutic Support System, where they service over 60,000 kids in the state of Georgia with issues maybe from autism, epilepsy, mild retardation. These kids are in school, and they can also benefit like those kids in Illinois and Colorado, where the nurses have been allowed to get them CBD oil on school campus. So again, as far as access, we can also mimic the Michigan model to create secure access.
Thank you, Mr. McCrary.
Thank you.
Next up, Nicole.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, committee, for allowing me to speak, for allowing all of us to speak today. My name is Nicole Antoinette Buffong. March of 2017, I was diagnosed with HIV and chronic kidney disease. My doctors treated me with heavy narcotics, and when they reduced the dosage, I experienced opioid withdrawal. And in that moment, I made a conscious decision not to use pharmaceuticals to manage pain ever again. Cannabis was my only safe choice. I immediately began to immerse myself in the facts. The law, the history of prohibition, and the medical benefits. The more I learned, I realized that I could choose the natural and holistic route to healing my body and constantly risk my freedom, or the legal path of toxic and lethal pharmaceuticals, eventually leading to kidney failure or worse. A study conducted at University of Washington last year proved that heavy cannabis use, along with antiretroviral treatment, helps to suppress the HIV. Why are my legislators making decisions for me that only me and my doctor need to be making for my treatment? My doctors and I have discussed the best treatment for me, and juicing the plant raw is the best treatment. And 5% THC is not enough of the cannabinoid to manage my pain efficiently. I need the full spectrum of the plant in order to fight the virus. As the Georgia chapter president of Minorities for Medical Marijuana, I introduced myself as a cannabis patient and advocate. I quickly realized that I was not alone in this fight for common sense reform. We began a campaign with the support of organizations like Students for Sensible Drug Policy, and our goal is to register as many new veteran voters as we can, inspire the next generation of leaders to be the change they want to see in the world, to elect legislators that actually serve its constituents and are not persuaded by the deep pockets of Big Pharma and the private prison system. This soon-to-be healed woman that stands before you is asking that the committee provide safe access to the entire plant for me and thousands of other patients in the state that need it. I am also asking that the committee takes a serious look at allowing patients to grow their own medicine. The plant keeps me off of deadly opioids.
Thank you, Nicole. Next up, we have Lynn Williams.
My name is Lynn Williams. I'm from Douglasville, Georgia. I was diagnosed with cancer in October of 2016 and went through chemo and radiation treatments. Excuse me. It didn't go well. My oncologist said I had the worst reactions to chemo and radiation that she has ever seen. I was hospitalized and in rehab for 3 months. Today, I have permanent neuropathy in my hands and feet as a result. Medical cannabis oil might help me with this and restore normal feeling, but as the law stands now, I will never know. To get medical cannabis, which could have helped me, I would have to travel to a state where it's legal. Then my husband and I would have to commit several felonies to bring it back to Georgia. Besides the risk of prison, I would risk losing my state pension. I worked over 30 years at the Georgia School for the Deaf and the Georgia Department of Education to get that pension. I decided not to take those risks. I could have left my family and friends when I needed them most and moved, or I could have asked someone else to take those risks for me. I decided not to do either one. I very much hope that the next session of the General Assembly will revise the law so that all of us who need cannabis oil can get it legally without risk to either our freedoms or our livelihood, or without asking others to take those risks, as the parents of children we have heard from today have, and as those adults we have heard from who have other diseases have had to do in order to get the medicine that they need. Thank you for the opportunity to comment today.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. All right, to the podium next, Greg and Sue Criswell, Charles Walker, Blaine Steely, Tanya Diddy, and Dr. Rashawn Hodge. And let's just start pumping them out. Go.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me now? I'm Ted Metz. Hi, everyone. Some of you people already know me. I stand here before you representing the Libertarian Party of Georgia, and the first thing I would like to say, in the words of our founding father, Thomas Jefferson, if a law is unjust, a man is not only right to disobey it, he is obligated to do so. All of our cannabis laws currently are unjust because it is a God-given plant. It's here for a reason. It treats multiple things. It can even feed us, clothe us, and fuel us. Under the state constitution, Article 1, Section 1, Clause 11, the jury has the right to judge the law and the facts. Giovanni McCoy down in South Georgia was just recently acquitted of any wrongdoing for growing his own medical marijuana in his home to treat his medical condition. I would like to see Georgia very much allow in-home grow for those that need it. And if that doesn't work, if we can't get some sensible legislation, I'm advocating for civil disobedience. I'm advocating for jury nullification because the law is not right. No one has the right to tell anyone else what they can and cannot do to treat themselves. 1 in 6 Americans today are on some sort of psychiatric drug. Those drugs have long-term health effects, which could be easily replaced with cannabis of some sort. The opioid crisis is a ridiculous problem we have right now. In every state that they've legalized cannabis, opioid deaths have decreased by 25%. I could go on, but I can yield my time to someone else.
I think yield's a great idea. What was the name again, though?
Ted Metz.
Ted Metz. Were you on this? Okay. Thank you, Ted. Greg? Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Greg Criswell. I'm speaking on behalf of my wife of 33 years, Sue Criswell, who's back there in the audience. I want to thank the commission, especially for adding intractable pain and PTSD to HB 65. To give you some perspective, my wife has recently got her card. She's transitioned completely to medical cannabis. So from the perspective of 4 years of chronic pain, chronic spine pain, peripheral neuropathy, she is now completely off of the opiates and no longer relies on opioid medication for her quality of life. And I believe that is huge. The fact that she walked up here today, walked up these steps from the parking lot, she could not have done that, several months ago. Absolutely impossible. So from that perspective, this is huge. Access is very difficult. I'd love to see us get some access here where we could legally obtain high quality oil that's been tested and very, very safe. From her perspective, and I heard a lot of things today about debilitating conditions. There's obviously a desperate need for these families with children with epilepsy. I mean, that is a clear-cut need. But there's also people that just want a better quality of life. She's a mom, she's a wife, she's a daughter, and we're soon to be grandparents in a few months. So we got so she's going to be the one chasing the kid around, not me. I'm too tired. From that perspective, I'll quote something that she says quite often: "I just want to feel better." And the results are very, very real. Thank you again to the commission. Thank you, Representative Peak, for all your efforts. And I'll yield some more time to these folks here. Thanks.
Thank you, Greg. Charles Walker.
Hello, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Charles Walker, and I'm 31 years old, and was diagnosed with stage 4 brain cancer, glioblastoma multiforme, in August of last year. I have undergone 2 brain surgeries, 6 rounds of radiation, and 6 weeks of radiation and numerous rounds of chemotherapy. Currently, I am on a clinical trial with Duke University with the polio virus to attack my brain cancer. Every day I take 18 pills. Those are just prescriptions, 18 pills to start my morning off with. They're all used for something different. To help manage with the various side effects I have for treatment, such as anxiety, inflammation of the brain, nausea. They are also there for headaches, fatigue, depression, appetite. The oils help manage some of these side effects and increase my appetite and energy. As a father of a young 6-month-old and a community member, I would like to see the state of Georgia and this industry work together to increase the transparency and provide a safe and legal way for transactions to happen. It's very, very frustrating to have anybody else, a card-carrying member, to have a oil registration card, but no legal way to access the oil. As I continue to fight this aggressive cancer that is in my brain, I look to the commission, to the committee, and want to ask you something. How are you able to pass a law that will define and legitimate the roles of the growers and distributors as to ease the stress of people like me, a man whose mental capacity is not what it used to be? Will a timeline and likelihood of this law being passed look like? Because time is not on my side. I yield my time.
Thank you, Charles. Blaine Steely.
Yes, my name is Blaine Steely. I'm from Calhoun, Georgia. I actually live in Dallas, but my business is there. It's called Amavi Cannabis. And I'm not using my time to sell anything. I just want to make a couple of comments. Representative Peak, speaking on the gray area that we were talking about, the CBD oil that has the 0.3 THC in it actually does help you. I wanted to put that out there. You can get safe access to things already in Georgia. We do want the THC oil, but the CBD oil that comes with the THC is already, if you have the conditions that are listed, it's 25 milligrams is the recommended dosage, but if you have those conditions, it's more like 40 to 50. So for example, my friend that I met earlier, Jane, she takes CBD oil, which is just the hemp, no THC whatsoever. 2 sprays, 3 milligrams of CBD. That is no effect at all. So that's why you're not getting the effect. To the people that came up with issues, if you notice, most of the issues were down the center of the body. All of our receptors, cannabinoids, are in the center. When it comes to addiction, the last thing that I wanted to comment on, Representative Clark, you had a question, I can't remember what it was, but in the center of your brain, that's where heroin attacks your brain, right in the center. And there are cannabinoid receptors, CB1 and CB2, around your brain that when you have a deficiency, like everyone in here has a deficiency of cannabinoids, if you do not already use it, then it allows heroin, opioids to access your brain. When you're on cannabis, it simply blocks it out. And that is how addiction is cured by cannabis, to answer your question. More so of how rather than why. And I think that us focusing on alcohol and tobacco and putting that, comparing with 80,000 deaths compared to 0, which my lady in the back put up the 0, how many overdoses there are, this is 0. And we should be able to grow. If you haven't looked into it, state to state, North Dakota is recreational and medical, but they're allowing everybody in their state to grow and sell. That's what's on the ballot for November. So maybe we, as in the South, in the East, can be the very first to kind of take over cannabis, because if you don't see this growth that's
Blaine,
coming
I
right
hate
now,
to cut you off because you're on a roll, but we got to roll, brother.
Florida doesn't have it figured out, and neither does Massachusetts. It's
Thank
been
you.
1 year, no dispensaries.
All right. Dr. Hodge.
I want to thank the Joint Commission for the comments and your time. You guys have empathy, and that's what the state needs. You all know I broke my neck in 2012. I'm a physician. I represent the 13.8% of all patients signed up in this state. My staff has done that. So I got all the data, I see the follow-up, and I can say without a shadow of a doubt, 0 negative side effects, and I have over 750 patients in the registry. So as we talk about the infrastructure, let's talk about the vehicles for cannabis for administration. I propose a whole leaf for vaping. So let's do more than just tinctures. Medical cannabis is, vaporization of medical cannabis will be inclusive for everyone with pulmonary diseases, lung diseases. There's swallowing and protecting your airway is a luxury that a lot of patients don't have. So vaporizing is the most predictable, the most efficacious way to treat those symptoms and for them to get the cannabis. Let's not leave patients with severe lung conditions and severe swallowing conditions. Also, patients at the end of life can't protect their airway, and we have hospice on the criteria since 2015. So as you get closer to death, you can't swallow. So I've seen in my practice that I can use this cannabis or recommend cannabis for patients taking their first breath to their last breath, but we do need access. Please allow in public schools. A lot of caregivers are single parents, so we got to remove our kids to give the medicine. How can they keep a job? Plus, take their kid out every 4 hours. I agree. Let the universities with agriculture programs grow. UGA in Fort Valley. Expungements of records for nonviolent cannabis crimes. Let's please bring that up. And as we make legislation, let's not forget what makes Georgia great. And what makes Georgia great is our diversity. And right now, brown and black people make up less than 1% of this $50 billion market. Let's make sure there's some inclusion as we write our laws.
Thank you, Dr. Hodge.
Thank you, because we all know the arrest rates have been to 9-1 in most major cities, and the rate of use has been equal between black and whites. And again, blacks have suffered from this failed drug war, so let's make sure there's some inclusion.
Thank you, Dr. Hodge. Okay. Here's the deal. We're 7 minutes past the 30-minute extension. So what we're going to do, I'm going to do 5 more. Members of the commission, out of sake of your time, I know I told y'all we would get out of here at a decent time. If you need to go, just excuse yourself and go. But so we're going to do 5 more. I've got Raquel Williams, Marilyn Pierce, Nicholas Estabrook, Shantae Boyce, and Jane McGowan. And just as they're making their way up, for those of you that did not get a chance to speak, you can do one of 2 things. You can either submit to us in writing or an email your statement, and we will enter it into the public record. or you can come to our 9/18 meeting. I'm going to keep this list, and we'll pick up where we left off. That meeting will be held in Carrollton. Representative Gravely will get in that in a little bit. So, all right. So, again, I apologize, but we've tried to be as accommodating as possible. So, Raquel Williams, if you would like to come up first.
Good afternoon. I appreciate this opportunity to speak to everyone here. I stand before you as a disabled registered nurse. Unfortunately, I've been on both sides of the spectrum, taking care of patients, and now I'm a patient myself. I had a work injury 10 years ago that has left me permanently disabled because they did the wrong back surgery and kept it a secret and allowed me to walk around for 5 years with technically a broken back. So since having the corrective surgery 4 years ago, I almost died twice, and now I suffer in pain constantly. Now that they've added intractable pain and PTSD to the registry, now I can go ahead and I can apply to get the card. Pretty much my quality of life is really, really nothing. I still have back flare-ups. My kids have to take me to the emergency room. There are some days that I can't even get out of bed, and I'm 45 years old. I implore and would love to be a part of anyone that is trying to do anything that will definitely add more health issues to this registry. I thank you for this time, and good luck to everybody who's trying to get on this cannabis oil.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Marilyn Pierce.
Hi, my name is Marilyn Pierce. I'm a nurse too. And some of the things that make me a valid person to be up here is that my husband is service-related disability with this terrible back injury, chronic pain. I take care of my mother at home who is end-stage Parkinson's. I have a son who died of opioid overdose, and as an RN, I have people coming to me asking me about medical cannabis and how to get it, what it's for, what are the guidelines. So I would say that I appreciate the magnanimous thing that you are attempting to do today is access to the product. But I would say that part of the solution is access to information, that as a state, we need the place where information is abundant and free for all of us as healthcare workers so that we can provide that information to others without fear of repercussion, just as with Ms. Hedzig and her neurologist who said, this is what I provide. Oh, no, never mind, I don't want to do that anymore, because there's fear-based issues in the healthcare community about what we're allowed to say or what we will get in trouble for saying or providing information to patients. And patients themselves should have that information, and then eventually with all this information, including information from people like Dr. Raduca and Ms. Galloway, so that everyone can make their own decision, then that provides a clear and opportunity for future solutions, such as how to provide the product and access to the product to be better able to be accepted by all and understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pierce. Nicholas Estabrook.
Thank you, Chairperson and members of the study committee, for allowing me to testify on this issue. I appreciate the attention to ensuring that the medical use of THC oil is stringently regulated, and that this doesn't mean that marijuana is becoming legal in Georgia. The thought of Georgia's young people believing that their state leaders support the use of marijuana for the general public makes me fearful. I won't take too much of your time, but I do want to briefly share part of my story with you to bring light to the effects of perception of harm on substance use, particularly marijuana for young people. My name is Nicholas Estabrook, and I'm a person in long-term recovery. What that means for me is that I have not used any mood or mind-altering substances, including marijuana, since November of 2014. However, my recovery today is much more than just abstinence and enables me to live a happy and meaningful life. I'm a son to my parents, an uncle to 2 nephews and a niece, and I'm a brother to 7 siblings. Today, I am the Recovery Community Organization Development Project Coordinator for the Georgia Council on Substance Abuse, and I'm also majoring in public policy at Georgia State University. I speak out about my recovery because I believe that everyone should have the same opportunities that I've had to get and to stay well. I started smoking marijuana in my junior year of high school on the weekends with friends. However, I became dependent on the substance very shortly after. I began using on a daily basis and eventually experienced poor performance in school and incarceration in my junior and senior year and later on in life. I would like to point out that when I started smoking marijuana, I did not think there was anything wrong with it. I had the perception that marijuana was okay because it was a plant and pop culture portrayed it as harmless. Also, hearing about medical and recreational use in other states while a student backed up my misperceptions of it being beneficial for recreational use. Perhaps if there was better education surrounding the difference of use, I might not have thought the same way about it. Due to my lack of perception of harms surrounding marijuana, I became dependent on it, which led to 3 separate run-ins with the law. I had a misdemeanor in my junior year, 2 felonies in my senior year, and 3 more felonies several years later, all due to me trying to support my habit of smoking and using marijuana. Again, thank you for your time. I appreciate the work you are all doing. And while I understand that we're not here talking about recreational use, I believe we need more education surrounding the use of THC oil for medical disorders and how that differs from recreational use of leaf marijuana in order to avoid similar negative externalities that we have been experiencing during the current opioid epidemic.
Thank you, Nicholas.
Yep.
Next up, Shantae Boyce.
Good afternoon, and I thank you for taking your time. So I'm going to sum this up very quickly. I'm not going to tell you how you should do your jobs. I'm not going to tell you what to do at your jobs. I'm a mother of 3 children. 2 are in college right now in their 3rd year. They last said to me, "Mom, we don't want you to die." In 1999, I was diagnosed with lupus. In 2016, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. And then just recently, in May 15th, I was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer, along with something else they can't find. I had a hysterectomy because they found cancer inside of my system and said to me that they needed to go in and give me a total hysterectomy. Came to be a partial hysterectomy, and then leaving me taking pills and pills and pills and pills. I'm not on welfare, I'm not on Medicaid, I'm a strong African-American woman, just to find out that when I'm busting my behind and being denied for lupus because it's something that is not in your category, and I go to work and I fall and pass out, the insurance that I pay for doesn't do me any justice. So I'm gonna ask you to do your job and find a way that what we can do is not just complain about this, because I understand it's yes and no. I didn't start smoking marijuana until my very first diagnosis. I was a person that used to fire my employees for coming in high. Now I advocated. I can't work a 9 to 5. I can't work. But there's a young gentleman in here that makes a CBD product that saves my life to the point that I can possibly try to just function. And then on any other day, I'm at his home pushing and advocating other parents and children, because this is not about recreational right now. We're just trying to survive. I want to be able to wake up and see my kids graduate. I want to be able to stand up here and fight so much, but I can't, because I have people telling me, no, this is about alcohol or anything. It's just about trying to survive. And I just want everyone who's in this room to survive.
Thank you, Ms. Boyce. Ms. Jane McGowan.
Wow.
Ms. Jane, if you would speak into the microphone,
sorry.
please.
I just want to say, just do it. Just make it legal, make it accessible. You know how many millions of stories there are. I have Parkinson's. I've had it for 13 years. I'm what they call early onset, before 70. All of you sitting here in the room, 1 out of 6 of you are going to have Parkinson's by the time you're 70 or older. That's what happens. So you're going to have what I'm having right now. It changes your whole life. It changes everything you do. And it's our country is, the baby boomers are booming now. And we're all coming down with Parkinson's. We need this medication. I have had 2 near-death experiences taking legal drugs that are prescribed for Parkinson's. The side effects are horrendous. And I had to figure it out on my own. My doctor didn't. My pharmacist called me one day and she says, "Have you ever gotten this antidepressant and this Parkinson drug before at the same time?" I said, "I guess not. But I've been taking them both for 8 years." And she says, "Well, I just got a warning that when these are prescribed at the same time, they can cause side effects that they don't cause individually." And I already, she read them out to me, and I had 3 out of the 7 symptoms, and I'd had them for a year and a half and told my doctors about them, and he kept saying, it's just Parkinson's. Well, the bottom one was death, and I decided to do something before I got to number 7. So I went down to, and wanted to talk to the doctor, and they said they didn't have an appointment. And I went back in a few days, and they still wouldn't let me talk to him. And I said, well, I've got to do something. She says, well, you've got an appointment in 3 weeks. Why don't you just come back then? And I said, well, I'll tell you why. Because y'all have a new policy that charges $25 if you change or cancel your appointment. You know how that happens at the doctor now? And I said, if I keep going down this list of side effects that I'm having from my medicine, I'll be dead by then. And you're going to charge me that $25. And I don't want you to do that. And so suddenly she had an appointment at 9 o'clock the next morning. And I get in there with the doctor, and I said, these are the things I've been telling you about. And he said again, it's just Parkinson's. And so anyway, I discussed which ones I could stop taking right away. Within a day and a half, 2 of those 3 things were gone, and I had them a year and a half. And I'm talking about cardiac problems and falling asleep while driving, and all this kind of stuff that can kill you. But we really need this, and you're going to need it sometime soon. Every 3rd person there.
I think she's pointing at you, Butch.
So do it for yourself. Do it for yourself. Y'all are great people, and I can tell you have a lot of compassion. Do it for all the people of Georgia. Just do it. You could do it, and get it. Not only get go ahead and do all the stuff you need to do instead of doing a little this year and a little this year and this, and then you can talk about something else.
Thank you, Ms. McGowan. Now, again, if we didn't get to you, my apologies. And I'll go back to, if you'd like to submit anything for public record, we'd love to have it, or you can email that to denise.sampson@senate.ga.gov. We've got her email everywhere, so you should be able to find it if you can't remember that. But again, if you would like to come back on the 18th when we're in Carrollton, and we did not, I'm going to keep this list, and we'll just pick up where we left off. If you're there, then you can stand. If you're not, then you're not. So, Chairman Gravely?
Yes. Thank you, Chairman Brass. I want to thank everybody who came to testify today. I want to thank those who really showed the courage. Whether you support or oppose, it takes a lot to stand up and to testify before a crowded room, to talk about stories that are both personal and sometimes painful. And so I want to thank you all for doing that. Also want to let everyone know that our next meeting is going to be on September 18th at the University of West Georgia. And we are going to be hearing from law enforcement and be provided a legal analysis of what the federal law is today and how that applies to states and possibly certain congressional legislation that could be coming through at that time. Okay. And we're going to have some comments from the committee, and then I'll come back after that and wrap it up.
I'll be very brief. To both co-chairmen, thank you for running an orderly and productive meeting. To those of you who stayed, you know, it's easy to come here early and speak early and hit the door and not hear what other people have to say. The biggest fear I have in passing legislation is the fear of unintended consequences. And the final speaker there spoke to the unintended consequences to a great degree. And to the gentleman who so poignantly put that time is not on his side, I thank you for your time. I thank you for taking the effort. I thank you for being here. And I thank all of you for staying to the end, because, you know, sometimes legislation is difficult art, and it's never perfect because it's made by men, and men are not perfect. And I thank Ms. Galloway from one side, one view, and others for their view, and all those in between. And we're trying to find a common ground. And when you find a common ground, it doesn't mean that you compromise or that you give up your principles, but it means that you find a place where everyone can go forward and everyone can benefit. But I just want to share that with the families that are here, with the individuals that are here, and there's a lot of passion, both passion in your heart and in your mind about this issue, and we will do all we can to advance legislation that's good for all of Georgia, good for the quality of life in Georgia. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for indulging me.
Anyone else from the committee want to? Okay.
All right, I'll see. So as we go forward, please try to be at the next meeting. Thank you for an orderly meeting. But before we go, I think everyone that testified or gave personal stories spoke to the success or spoke to the opportunity that maybe they had due to one person, which is why I believe we're sitting here today. We're going to miss him very much so. I want to thank you for what you've done on behalf of the state of Georgia. I want to thank you for what you've done for hundreds, if not thousands, of people in this state that didn't have answers, didn't know where to go, and were walking down a path blindly. And I want to thank you for having the courage to show your colleagues and other people in this state that we can do some good things in this body. And I want to thank you personally for helping members of my own family in their time of need. And the effects that we have seen in our family are unbelievable. And it is very joyous to see and communicate with members of my family that were unable to communicate. I think we owe you a debt of gratitude. I think the state of Georgia owes you a debt of gratitude. This committee does. And I want to recognize you at this time. And if you want to, I'm going to stand up and say thank you personally from the bottom of my heart, Alan Peake, for everything you've done on this issue and for the momentum that you have gracefully and with integrity carried us through. 30 seconds. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? We don't need a motion to adjourn, do we? All right, all in favor? All right, we're adjourned.